Oh my God, Dad, you look ridiculous. This is going straight to my story.
This isn't funny. Take these off.
I no way. The Zimba wants a prank camera. Is he arrest? No, it's just a prank.
Take these. He's not back. Handcuffs off your resort box of... And right. Wash you. I said Mal. That's an order. Thank you, son. I am so for you are. Or yes, we are.
I can't believe you all. Yes, to you are. Thanks to you all.
The cold steel of the handcuffs bit into my wrists as my daughter-in-law laughed loud enough for the entire neighborhood to hear. "I told you he was trying to steal our SUV," Rebecca shouted, lifting her phone to record every humiliating second. My own son stood only a few feet away, saying nothing, while strangers stared at me like I was a criminal. Then another police vehicle pulled into the driveway. The county police chief stepped out, looked straight at me, and his face drained of color. In complete silence, he rushed forward and whispered only one word. "Mom, who did this to you?" If this story touches something in your heart, I'd love to know you're here. Please like this video if you believe respect should never have an age limit. Subscribe if you enjoy emotional stories about family justice and second chances. And before we continue, tell me in the comments where you're watching, from what time it is where you are, and what you would have done if you had witnessed an elderly parent being treated this way. Before the handcuffs, before the police cars, before my daughter-in-law stood in my driveway laughing like she had finally won some private war, I was just a quiet old man trying to live out the rest of my years with peace. My name is William Parker, and for most of my life, I believed peace was something a person earned by loving well, working hard, and keeping their word. I was 68 years old, retired from 37 years in education, and still woke up every morning at 5:30 out of habit. My body no longer needed to be at the elementary school before the first bus pulled in, but my mind still heard the squeak of little sneakers on hallway floors, the chatter of children, the morning bell, the voices calling. "Good morning, Principal Parker." I had been a teacher first, then assistant principal, then principal of Maple Ridge Elementary in Clayton County, Georgia. That school had been more than my workplace. It had been my second home. I knew which children came to school hungry. I knew which mothers worked double shifts. I knew which fathers were trying, but drowning under bills. I kept granola bars in my office drawer, spare coats in a closet behind the nurse's station, and books on every table because I believed a child with a story in their hands had a chance to imagine a better life. My late wife Denise used to tease me and say, "William, you don't run a school. You run a shelter with spelling tests." She was right. Denise had been the soft part of my life. She was a church pianist, a woman with gentle hands and a laugh that could make a hard day loosen its grip around my chest. We married young, built our home slowly, and raised our only son Michael inside those walls. Every baseboard, every patch of grass, every creaky stair carried a memory. I remembered Michael learning to walk in the hallway, Denise burning her first Thanksgiving turkey in the kitchen, the three of us sitting on the porch during summer storms, counting seconds between lightning and thunder. That house was never just a house to me. It was proof that two ordinary people could build something steady if they loved each other enough. After Denise passed away from a stroke 7 years before everything happened, silence moved into the house like a fourth family member. It sat at the dinner table. It followed me down the hallway. It waited beside me in bed. Some mornings, I still turned toward her side before remembering there would be no warm shoulder there, no soft breathing, no sleepy voice asking whether I had made coffee yet. Michael tried at first. He really did. He came by with groceries. He fixed the porch light. He called every Sunday evening. Back then, I still saw the boy I had raised, the boy who used to bring home math tests with perfect scores and ask if I was proud before I even saw the grade. He had grown into a neat, cautious man, an accountant who lived by spreadsheets and avoided arguments the way some people avoid dark alleys. Then he met Rebecca. I do not want to say she was cruel from the beginning. That would be too simple, and real life is rarely simple. Rebecca Parker came into our family, polished, charming, and careful. She had a bright smile, a clean white SUV, and the kind of confidence that made people step aside before she asked. She worked in luxury real estate staging homes for wealthy buyers, and she treated life like a room that needed constant rearranging. At first, she called me Mr. Parker with respect. She brought flowers when she visited. She complimented Denise's framed photographs in the hallway and said the house had good bones. I remember that phrase because she said it while looking around my living room, not like a daughter-in-law entering a family home, but like a buyer imagining what walls could be knocked down. Still, I wanted to love her. For Michael's sake, I tried. When they married, I gave them the money Denise and I had saved for Michael's future. Not all of it, but enough to help them start clean. When Sophia was born, my granddaughter with Denise's eyes and Michael's shy smile, I thought maybe God had given me another reason to keep breathing with purpose. That little girl became my sunlight. I rocked her on the same porch where I had once rocked her father. I taught her to read before kindergarten. I made pancakes shaped like hearts, though mine always came out lopsided. Sophia called me Grandpa Will when she was little. Later, when she became a teenager and thought everything needed to sound less childish, she shortened it to Grandpa. But when she was scared or upset, she still whispered Grandpa Will, and I knew she needed more than a ride or a snack. She needed safety. For a while, we were a family. Then the small changes began. Rebecca stopped asking if she could move things in my house and started announcing that she had already done it. Denise's old quilt disappeared from the guest room because Rebecca said it looked too country. My framed school awards were moved from the hallway into a closet because she said they made the place feel dated. The family Bible that had sat on the coffee table for 30 years was tucked inside a cabinet because, according to her buyers, preferred neutral spaces. Buyers. That word began slipping into conversations long before anyone admitted what they were planning. Michael had taken a financial hit after a bad investment. He was embarrassed, though he tried to hide it. I found out when he came to me one evening sitting at my kitchen table with both hands wrapped around a cup of coffee he never drank. "Dad," he said, staring down. "I hate asking you this. I already knew what was coming. A father usually does. He needed help refinancing some debt. Rebecca had convinced him that if I added his name to a portion of the property paperwork, they could secure better financing and protect the family's future. That was how she phrased it. When she joined the conversation later, protect the family's future. I looked at Michael that night and saw worry in his eyes. I saw my son, not the paperwork. I saw the little boy who once cried because he had lost a library book. I trusted him completely. So I signed. Not everything, not full ownership, but enough to give him leverage, enough to make things complicated later, enough for Rebecca to begin treating me like I had handed her the keys to my dignity. After that, she changed. Not all at once. People like Rebecca rarely reveal themselves in one dramatic moment. They peel away their kindness slowly, like wallpaper, until the cold wall underneath shows through. She began correcting me in front of people. "William, we don't fry food in this house anymore. William, please don't leave your old truck parked out front when clients drive by. William, you really should ask before inviting church people over." Church people. She meant my friends. Then she stopped calling the house mine. She called it our property, then the asset, then Michael's investment. Every time she said it, something inside me tightened. I told myself not to overreact. I told myself younger people spoke differently. I told myself Denise would want me to be patient. But patience can become a cage when people use your goodness against you. Michael saw some of it, I know he did. Sometimes Rebecca would make a sharp comment, and he would glance at me with apology in his eyes. But his mouth stayed closed. That became his habit's silent regret. And let me tell you, silent regret does not protect anyone. It only keeps the peace for the person causing harm. Sophia noticed too. She would come sit beside me on the porch after dinner, pretending to scroll through her phone while really watching my face. "Grandpa," she asked one evening, "does Mom make you sad?" I smiled, because adults often lie to children when they think they are protecting them. "No, sweetheart. Your mother just likes things a certain way." Sophia looked toward the kitchen window where Rebecca was talking sharply to Michael. "She likes things her way," she said. I did not answer. Sometimes children speak the truth so plainly, it leaves no room for adults to hide. The one thing Rebecca could not control was the bond between Sophia and me. That bothered her. I saw it in the way her jaw tightened when Sophia hugged me too long, or when she found us laughing in the kitchen over one of Denise's old recipes. She started limiting our time together. Sophia suddenly had tutoring, dance practice, social events, weekend trips. Whenever I offered to drive her, Rebecca said it was already handled. I began to feel like a guest in the family I had built. By the spring of that year, Rebecca's comments became bolder. She talked about renovations over dinner without asking my opinion. She showed Michael photos of modern kitchens, glass stair rails, gray flooring, open-concept living rooms. She said the neighborhood was rising fast and that the house could sell for more if they updated it aggressively. Aitan said quietly, "Your mother and I built this place to live in, not flip." Rebecca smiled without warmth. "Things change, William." There it was, my name spoken like a warning. A few weeks later, the garage code stopped working. I stood there with grocery bags cutting into my fingers, pressing the same 4 numbers Denise and I had chosen 20 years earlier. The keypad flashed red again and again. Rebecca opened the door from inside and looked at me as if I had interrupted something important. "Oh," she said, "we changed it for security. No apology, no new code offered." That same week, the Wi-Fi password changed. Then the alarm system. Then the online account for the electric bill, which had been in my name for decades. Each change was small enough to explain away, but together they formed a pattern. A fence being built around me. I should have called my attorney then. Patricia Bennett had been Denise's friend, and later mine. She had warned me when I added Michael to the paperwork. "William," she said, "love your son, but protect yourself too." I had laughed gently and told her Michael would never hurt me. And maybe Michael would not have, not by himself. But betrayal does not always come from the hand that strikes. Sometimes it comes from the hand that does nothing while someone else raises the weapon. The SUV became an issue near the beginning of summer. It was a black Lincoln Navigator that Michael had purchased after a promotion, though I had helped with the down payment when Sophia needed safer transportation after their old vehicle broke down. My name was still tied to some of the financial paperwork, but Rebecca drove it most often. She treated that vehicle like a crown. One afternoon, I moved it from the driveway to the curb so a repairman could reach the garage. Rebecca came outside, so fast, her heels clicked across the walkway like gunfire. "Do not drive my car again," she snapped. I held up the keys calmly. "I moved it 20 feet, Rebecca." "That is not the point." Michael stood behind her, rubbing the back of his neck. "Dad, maybe just ask next time." Ask? To move a car I had helped pay for in front of the house I had built while standing on a driveway, I had poured with my own hands. I remember looking at my son then and feeling something quiet break. Not anger. Anger would have been easier. This was grief. The kind that comes when someone you love is still alive but no longer standing where they used to stand in your heart. After that day, I started keeping notes. Not because I wanted revenge, but because some old instinct from my years as a principal told me documentation mattered. When a child came into my office crying, I wrote down what happened. When a teacher reported a concern, I wrote it down. Facts had a way of surviving when emotions got twisted, so I wrote. Garage code changed without notice. Rebecca removed Denise's belongings. Michael, present, did not object. Argument about SUV. Rebecca called it my car. Sophia upset. I tucked the notebook inside the bottom drawer of my desk, beneath old school programs and birthday cards from former students. But even then, I did not understand how far Rebecca was willing to go. I thought she wanted control. I thought she wanted the house. I thought she wanted to push me out quietly and make it look like my choice. I never imagined she would call the police. I never imagined she would stand in my driveway and laugh while an officer tightened handcuffs around my wrists. And I certainly never imagined that the person who would step out of that county police vehicle was a man I had once found crying on a school bench 30 years earlier, a boy with no mother, no home, and no idea that one day he would call me by the one name Rebecca could never understand. Mom. Rebecca's plan did not begin with police lights. It began with paint samples. That may sound strange, but when I look back now, I can still see her standing in my kitchen one Saturday morning, holding 6 gray paint cards against the wall Denise had chosen yellow 25 years earlier. Denise used to say, yellow made a kitchen feel like morning, even at night. Rebecca said, yellow made the house look old and emotional. Old and emotional. That was how she spoke about anything with history. She had invited a contractor over without telling me. A tall man named Brent walked through my home with a tablet nodding as Rebecca described knocking down walls, replacing cabinets, widening doorways, removing sentimental clutter, and turning the back porch into something she called an entertainment extension. I sat at the kitchen table with my coffee cooling between my hands. Rebecca, I said, keeping my voice gentle. Why is a contractor measuring my kitchen? She did not look embarrassed. That was the first thing I noticed. Most decent people at least pretend shame when they cross a line. Rebecca simply smiled. We're just exploring options, William. Michael stood near the sink, avoiding my eyes. I looked at him. Michael. He cleared his throat. Dad, nothing is decided. But the measuring tape in Brent's hand said otherwise. Rebecca stepped closer to the contractor and pointed toward the wall where Denise had kept a small wooden shelf of cookbooks. That whole section can go. It closes off the space. My chest tightened. That shelf was handmade by my wife's brother, I said. Rebecca gave a small laugh, the kind people use when they think someone else's pain is inconvenient. And that's sweet, but buyers won't care. There was that word again. Buyers. I stared at her. Are we selling the house? Michael finally looked up, startled, as if the question had been waiting in the air and he had hoped nobody would grab it. Rebecca answered before he could. We're considering what makes financial sense for the family. For the family, I repeated. Yes, she said. You know, William, maintaining a house this size at your age is not practical. Stairs, repairs, taxes. It's a lot. I've managed it fine. For now. 2 words. Soft voice, sharp blade. Brent suddenly became very interested in his tablet. Michael shifted his weight from one foot to the other. I stood up slowly. This conversation should have happened with me, before a stranger came into my home. Rebecca's smile disappeared. With all respect, William, this is not just your home anymore. The kitchen went quiet. It was the first time she had said it so openly. No hints, no polished language, no pretending. Michael whispered Rebecca, but he did not correct her. That silence stayed with me longer than her words. After the contractor left, I went into my bedroom and opened the drawer where I kept the folder Patricia Bennett had given me. Legal documents, copies of signatures, property agreements. I read through them again, slower this time, noticing what I had not wanted to notice before. I had given Michael partial legal interest in the property, not Rebecca. Michael. But marriage has a way of letting one person's weakness become another person's weapon. 2 days later, the bank called. A young woman from customer service asked if I had authorized changes to notification preferences on one of my accounts. At first, I did not understand. Then she explained that email alerts had been redirected and paper statements had been stopped. I didn't request that, I said. There was a pause on the line. Mr. Parker, for security reasons, I recommend you visit a branch in person. My hand tightened around the phone. That afternoon, I drove to the bank and sat across from a manager named Mr. Alvarez, who had known me for years. He looked troubled as he turned his computer screen slightly away from me. There have been several access attempts, he said carefully. Some successful, some not. From who? I can't identify a person by name from this screen, but I can tell you the login came from a device not previously associated with you. I thought of Rebecca's laptop, always open on the dining room table. I thought of Michael asking me months earlier for help organizing tax documents. I thought of the way Rebecca had begun collecting mail before I reached the mailbox. What was changed, I asked. Contact information, security questions. An attempt was also made to add an authorized user to a secondary account, but that request was flagged. I sat very still. For a moment, the bank seemed to fade around me, the soft music the printer sounds, the polite conversations from nearby desks. I heard only Denise's voice in my memory. William, you trust people because you want them to be good, but wanting doesn't make it true. Mr. Alvarez helped me reset everything. New passwords, new security questions, two-step verification. He advised me to speak with my attorney, though he said it gently, as if saying it too directly might wound me. It did anyway. When I got home, Rebecca was in the foyer opening a package. Michael was at work. Sophia was upstairs. You went somewhere, she asked. The bank. Her hands paused for half a second. That half second told me more than any confession could have. Everything okay? She asked, too lightly. It is now. Her eyes narrowed, but she said nothing. That evening, the garage code changed again. This time, when I asked Michael for it, he looked genuinely confused. Rebecca said she gave it to you. No, I said. She didn't. He rubbed his forehead. I'll talk to her. But he never did. Or if he did, nothing changed. Then came the insurance papers. They arrived in an envelope addressed to Michael. But since it came to the house and the mail had been mixed together, I saw the company name. It was the homeowner's insurance provider I had used for 15 years. I was not trying to snoop, but when I picked up the envelope, a folded page slipped halfway out. My name was there, but something about it made me look twice. A signature. My signature. Except I had not signed anything. I stared at it for a long time. The handwriting was close, but not close enough. The W in William curled too tightly. The P in Parker was too sharp. Anyone who had watched me sign school certificates for decades would have known. But Rebecca had not known me then. She only knew the version of me she thought she could erase. I took a photo of the page before putting it back exactly as I found it. My hands trembled, not from fear, but from the deep ache of realizing someone in my own family had crossed from disrespect into fraud. That night, I called Patricia Bennett. She answered on the third ring. William, are you all right? Hearing the concern in her voice nearly broke me. People who truly care can hear trouble before you say a word. I'm not sure, I admitted. I told her about the contractor, the bank, the insurance papers, the changed codes, the SUV argument. She listened without interrupting. Patricia had been an attorney for nearly 40 years, but she had also been Denise's closest friend, which meant she knew the difference between my calm voice and my wounded one. When I finished, she exhaled slowly. William, I need you to stop assuming this is just family tension. I closed my eyes. She's my son's wife. She may also be building a paper trail. The phrase landed heavily. A paper trail for what? To make you look unstable, dependent, irresponsible, or dishonest. Any of those could help her pressure you out, challenge your rights, or justify removing your access to property. I looked down at my notebook on the desk. I've been writing things down. Good. Keep doing that. Make copies of everything. And William? Yes. Do not sign anything else. Not for Michael, not for Rebecca, not even if they cry. That last sentence hurt because she knew me. She knew tears could still move me, especially Michael's. A few days later, Rebecca started using a new tone with neighbors. I noticed it first at the mailbox. Mrs. Darlene Jenkins, who lived 2 houses down, asked if I was feeling better. Better, I asked. She looked uncomfortable. Rebecca mentioned you'd been having some confusion lately. Confusion? I felt heat rise into my face, but I kept my voice steady. I'm not confused, Darlene. She touched my arm kindly. I didn't think so. I just wanted to check. That was how poison spreads in polite neighborhoods, not through shouting, but through concern. Rebecca was not telling people I was a problem. She was making them think they had discovered it themselves. At church the following Sunday, another woman asked whether Michael was helping me manage things now. At the grocery store, a cashier who knew my family asked if I still drove myself. Each question came wrapped in kindness, but I could feel Rebecca's fingerprints underneath. She was preparing the world to doubt me. And Michael, my own son, let it happen. One evening, I overheard them arguing in the dining room. I had come downstairs for the water, moving quietly, because my knees were sore. Their voices carried through the partially closed door. We can't keep waiting, Rebecca said. Michael answered, He's my father, and I'm your wife. Sophia needs stability. We need financial breathing room. That house is sitting on money. That house is his life. No, Michael. It's an asset. And he is making emotional decisions that affect all of us. I leaned against the hallway wall. Michael said nothing. Rebecca continued colder now. If he won't cooperate, then we document why he shouldn't be making decisions? My breath caught. Michael's voice dropped. What does that mean? It means we stop letting him control the story. I returned to my room before they saw me. I sat on the edge of the bed staring at Denise's photograph on the nightstand. I tried? I whispered to her. The next morning, I found my spare SUV key missing from the small ceramic bowl near the back door. I had not used it in weeks, but I knew it had been there. Denise made that bowl in a church pottery class years ago, uneven and blue with her initials scratched on the bottom. I kept spare keys there out of habit. The house key remained. My old truck key remained. The small brass key to the shed remained. Only the Lincoln key was gone. I asked Rebecca at breakfast, Have you seen the spare key to the Navigator? She looked up from her phone. Why would I know where your things are? Michael glanced between us. It was in the blue bowl, I said. Rebecca smiled. Maybe you moved it and forgot? There it was again. Forgot. Confused. At your age, little stones laid carefully along a path that led exactly where she wanted. Sophia looked up from her cereal, her face pale. She opened her mouth, then closed it when Rebecca's eyes shifted toward her. I saw fear in my granddaughter's face, not dislike, not teenage frustration. Fear. That scared me more than the missing key. Later that afternoon, Sophia found me on the porch. She sat beside me without speaking for a while. The cicadas hummed in the trees, and the air smelled like cut grass. Grandpa, she whispered. Mom said if I tell you things, I'm betraying the family. I turned toward her slowly. What things? Her lower lip trembled. She said you're trying to take stuff from us. She said Dad is weak, and you use that. She said if people knew how you really were, they wouldn't feel sorry for you. I felt something heavy settle in my chest. Sophia, look at me. She did. Truth is not betrayal. Tears filled her eyes. I wanted to ask what else she knew. I wanted to push to protect myself, to understand the danger forming around me. But she was 15. She was a child trapped between adults who should have known better. So I only held her hand. That night, Rebecca stood in the driveway talking on the phone. I could see her from my bedroom window pacing beside the Lincoln Navigator. She thought no one could hear her, but the window was cracked open. Yes, she said. I have the key, situation handled. A pause. No, he won't suspect that. He still thinks this is about the house. Another pause. Then she laughed softly. When it happens, everyone will see exactly what I've been dealing with. I stepped back from the window. My heart was beating slowly, heavily. I did not yet know the full plan. I did not know she would call 911. I did not know she would accuse me of stealing a vehicle I had helped pay for. I did not know she would choose a day when half the neighborhood would be outside to witness my humiliation. But I knew enough. Rebecca was no longer trying to push me out quietly. She was preparing to destroy my name. And in a small town, once people believe an old man has lost his mind or lost his honesty, taking everything else from him becomes much easier. The first thing I did after overhearing Rebecca's phone call was something I should have done months earlier. I stopped assuming the best. That may sound like a small decision, but for someone who had spent nearly 4 decades believing that every child deserved another chance, every struggling parent deserved patience, and every misunderstanding could be solved with conversation, it felt like abandoning a piece of myself. I hated that feeling. For most of my life, trust had been my default setting. As a principal, I had watched children make terrible mistakes, then grow into remarkable adults because someone chose not to give up on them. I had believed the same was possible inside families. Now I wasn't so sure. The morning after Rebecca's mysterious phone call, I drove to attorney Patricia Bennett's office. Her law firm occupied the second floor of a red brick building overlooking the historic square in downtown Jonesboro. Denise and I had climbed those same stairs countless times over the years for Will's property documents, and once when Michael was 18 and insisted on buying a motorcycle despite our objections. Patricia greeted me with a long hug instead of a handshake. "You look exhausted," she said. "I didn't sleep much." I was afraid of that. Her office hadn't changed in 20 years. Bookshelves lined every wall. Framed degrees hung beside family photographs. A small ceramic angel Denise had given Patricia one Christmas still sat beside the window. Seeing that angel nearly undid me. Patricia poured 2 cups of coffee before opening a yellow legal pad. "Start from the beginning," she said. So I did. I told her everything. The contractor, the changing garage codes, the bank account, the forged-looking insurance signature, Rebecca telling neighbors I was becoming forgetful, the missing SUV key, the strange phone call, Sophia's frightened confession. I spoke for almost an hour without interruption. When I finished, Patricia folded her hands together. "This isn't random." "I know. This is organized." I nodded. "I think she's trying to force me out." Patricia leaned forward. "No, William." I looked up. "I think she's trying to make everyone believe you should leave voluntarily." There was a difference. One relied on force. The other relied on destroying credibility. "If people think you've become confused," Patricia continued, "then every objection you make becomes easier to dismiss." I stared at the grain in her wooden desk. "Even Michael." She hesitated. "Especially Michael." That answer hurt more than anything else she'd said. Patricia opened one of her desk drawers and removed a small digital recorder. "I want you to keep this." I frowned. "I don't spy on my family." "This isn't spying." She slid it across the desk. "It's documenting." I picked it up reluctantly. "It automatically records conversations when voices are detected. You don't have to press anything." I turned it over in my hands. "You think it'll come to that?" "I think," Patricia replied carefully, "Rebecca is building evidence against you." She paused. "You should start building evidence for yourself." That afternoon, I returned home earlier than usual. Rebecca wasn't there. Michael was still at work. Only Sophia sat at the dining room table doing summer reading assignments. She smiled the moment she saw me. "Hi, Grandpa." "Hi, sweetheart." I placed a paper bag on the table. "Peach pie." Her eyes lit up. "You went to Mrs. Jackson's bakery. I know your favorites." She laughed softly. For 10 peaceful minutes, we ate warm peach pie with vanilla ice cream exactly the way Denise used to serve it. Moments like those reminded me why I had endured everything else. Sophia suddenly became quiet. Grandpa? Yes? Can I ask you something? Always? If someone lies about another person, does that make them a bad person forever? I looked carefully at her. No. She seemed surprised. No? No. It makes them responsible. She frowned. What's the difference? A bad person doesn't always want to change. And responsible. They have to face what they've done. She stared at her plate. I don't think Mom wants to change. Neither did I. But I couldn't ask my granddaughter to carry that burden. Instead, I squeezed her hand. You're still allowed to love your mother. She nodded slowly. I know. Rebecca came home an hour later carrying expensive shopping bags. She stopped when she saw us laughing over old family photo albums. What are you doing? Looking at pictures, Sophia answered. Rebecca barely glanced at them. Dinner's at 6. Then she looked directly at me. And William? I'd appreciate it if you didn't fill Sophia's head with stories from the past. I smiled politely. These are family memories. Rebecca crossed her arms. We need to focus on the future. The future grows out of the past. No, her smile was thin. It replaces it. She walked upstairs without another word. Sophia whispered after she disappeared. She throws away old pictures sometimes. I felt my stomach tighten. What? I've been hiding some. My heart nearly stopped. Show me. Sophia disappeared upstairs and returned carrying a small cardboard box. Inside were dozens of family photographs, pictures of Denise holding newborn Michael, vacation photos, Christmas mornings, school graduations, church picnics, even our wedding portrait. I found these in the recycling bin. I couldn't speak. Rebecca hadn't just wanted to renovate the house. She had been erasing its history. That evening, Michael arrived home looking more tired than I'd ever seen him. He loosened his tie while standing in the kitchen. Long day. Rebecca kissed him lightly. I have good news. He smiled weakly. What? I spoke with a realtor. Michael looked surprised. I thought we agreed to wait. We're only getting information. My fork stopped halfway to my mouth. Rebecca continued casually. The market is perfect right now. Michael glanced toward me. Rebecca, she ignored him. If we list before fall, we could easily clear another 100,000. I finally spoke. We're discussing selling my home again. Rebecca sighed dramatically. William, why do you always make everything sound so personal? I stared at her. It is personal. It isn't only yours. I looked at Michael. Do you agree? He swallowed hard. I just think we should explore options. That sentence broke something inside me, not because of what he said, because of how easily he said it. The boy who once begged me never to sell this house because it smelled like Mom was now discussing listing it over meatloaf. 3 days later, another strange thing happened. I went to renew my volunteer parking permit at the Literacy Center, where I helped children learn to read. Mrs. Howard, the coordinator, looked uncomfortable. William? Yes? I almost called to check on you. Why? She hesitated. Someone said you weren't feeling well. What kind of well mentally? The word landed like a punch. She quickly added, I didn't believe it. But someone had said it. Rebecca wasn't limiting her stories to neighbors anymore. She was expanding them, creating witnesses, creating concern, creating doubt, exactly as Patricia predicted. That evening, I began carrying the digital recorder, not because I wanted to, because I had to. For several days, nothing unusual happened. Rebecca remained unusually pleasant, too pleasant. She started asking whether I needed help with medications. She asked if I'd remembered doctor's appointments. She offered to organize my paperwork. She even suggested scheduling a cognitive evaluation. just to be safe. Every sentence sounded caring. Every sentence also suggested something was wrong with me. I politely declined each offer. Each conversation went into the recorder. A week later, another piece of the puzzle appeared. I returned from grocery shopping to find Rebecca inside the garage. The Lincoln Navigator sat in the center. Its driver's door was open. Rebecca jumped slightly when she saw me. "Oh, I didn't hear you come in. What are you doing?" "Cleaning." She quickly closed the driver's door. I noticed something metallic in her hand, a key. She slipped it into her purse before answering. "I found an extra key. The one that disappeared." She smiled. "I don't know what you mean." Then she walked past me, leaving the SUV behind. I stood beside the vehicle for several seconds. Something felt wrong. Very wrong. I opened the driver's door. Nothing appeared unusual. The interior was spotless. Then I noticed the registration folder inside the glove compartment. Missing. I frowned. Rebecca had removed every document connected to the vehicle. Insurance, registration, maintenance records, everything. Only the owner's manual remained. I closed the glove compartment slowly. Someone preparing for a misunderstanding removes confusion. Someone preparing for a false accusation removes evidence. The following Saturday, our subdivision hosted its annual summer block party. Nearly every family participated. Children rode bicycles. Neighbors grilled hamburgers. Music drifted through the warm Georgia air. Rebecca volunteered to help organize parking. Oddly enough, she insisted the Lincoln remain parked prominently in our driveway, instead of taking it to the community lot. "It looks better here," she explained. I didn't argue, but I noticed. She also invited several neighbors over for coffee Sunday morning. More witnesses, more people, more eyes. Everything suddenly seemed choreographed. That night, around 11, I walked downstairs for a glass of water. As I passed the hallway, I noticed Rebecca standing outside on the front porch. She wasn't talking. She wasn't smoking. She was simply staring at the SUV. Then she checked her phone. A moment later, she smiled. It wasn't a happy smile. It was the smile of someone whose plan was finally ready. I quietly stepped back into the shadows before she noticed me. Something inside me whispered that tomorrow would change everything. I couldn't explain why. I simply knew. Before going to bed, I opened my notebook and wrote one final entry. Rebecca has become unusually calm. Missing vehicle documents. Missing spare key. Strange phone calls. Neighbors gathering tomorrow. I believe something is about to happen. I closed the notebook, placed it inside my desk drawer. Then, almost as an afterthought, I slipped Patricia's digital recorder into my shirt pocket. It would remain there the next morning, when Rebecca smiled sweetly and asked me to move the Lincoln Navigator just a few feet. When I believed I was simply helping. When police sirens echoed down our quiet street less than 5 minutes later. Everything Rebecca had been building for months was about to unfold exactly as she intended. Or so she believed. Sunday mornings had always been my favorite. Even after Denise passed away, I kept the same routine we had shared for decades. I woke before sunrise, brewed coffee in the old percolator she refused to replace, read a chapter from my Bible, and sat on the back porch while birds gathered around the oak tree she had planted the year Michael was born. That Sunday began exactly the same way. If someone had told me that before lunchtime, I would be standing in my own driveway in handcuffs, while my daughter-in-law laughed and my neighbors watched in silence, I would have thought they were describing another man's life. I had no idea that Rebecca's performance had already begun before I even walked downstairs. She was unusually cheerful. "Good morning, William," she said with a bright smile. The warmth in her voice caught me off guard. She hadn't spoken to me that kindly in months. "Morning." I made cinnamon rolls. I looked at the table. Fresh fruit, orange juice, warm pastries. Even my favorite blackberry preserves sat beside the coffee pot. Michael looked surprised, too. Rebecca almost never cooked breakfast on weekends. Sophia noticed it as well. She met my eyes for just a second. Something about her expression felt nervous, not confused, worried. Rebecca placed a plate in front of me. I've been thinking. I waited. I don't want us fighting anymore. Michael smiled with visible relief. That's great. She reached across the table and gently touched my hand. I know we've disagreed lately, but we're family. If someone had walked into the kitchen at that exact moment, they would have believed she was the perfect daughter-in-law. I'd like that, I answered honestly, because despite everything, I still wanted peace. Rebecca smiled. I'm glad. Then she casually added, "Oh, before church, would you mind moving the navigator to the curb?" I looked toward the front window. Why? The catering company is dropping off tables for the neighborhood luncheon. I remembered the block party organizers mentioning extra deliveries. Of course. It's only for a few minutes. No problem. She handed me the key, the same spare key that had disappeared weeks earlier. I looked at it for a second. You found it. She laughed lightly. It was under a couch cushion all along. I nodded, though something inside me whispered that wasn't true. Still moving a vehicle 20 feet hardly seemed worth an argument. Not on a Sunday. Not after what appeared to be an attempt at reconciliation. Looking back, that was exactly what Rebecca wanted me to think. After breakfast, I carried my coffee outside. Several neighbors were already setting up folding tables. Children chased each other across freshly cut lawns. Someone tested speakers that played soft Motown classics. It felt like every other neighborhood gathering we'd shared over the years. Mrs. Jenkins waved. "Morning, William?" "Morning." Mr. Collins across the street called out, "Beautiful day." It surely is. For a brief moment, life almost felt normal again. Then Rebecca stepped onto the porch. "William." "Yes." "Would you move the SUV now? They're almost here." She smiled sweetly enough that Mrs. Jenkins smiled back at her. Everything looked perfectly ordinary. I reached for the keys. As I slid into the driver's seat, I noticed something odd. The registration folder was still missing. I frowned. Maybe Michael had taken it. Before I could think further, Rebecca called again. "Just park it right over there." She pointed toward the curb. I started the engine. The navigator rolled forward smoothly. Barely 30 seconds later, I heard sirens. At first, I assumed they were passing through the neighborhood. Then one police cruiser turned onto our street. Then another. Then a third. All three stopped directly in front of our house. Red and blue lights reflected across the windshield. My stomach tightened. Officer Ethan Collins stepped out of the first patrol car. Young, professional, serious. His hand rested near his holster. He approached my driver's window. "Sir, turn off the vehicle." I blinked. "I'm sorry?" "Turn off the vehicle immediately." I complied. He motioned toward another officer. Both approached cautiously. "Please step out of the vehicle." I opened the door. "Officer, what's going on? Do you have identification?" I handed him my driver's license. He studied it, then looked back toward Rebecca. She hurried down the driveway, breathing heavily, as though she had been frightened. "That's him." She pointed directly at me. "I told dispatch he's trying to take my vehicle." I stared at her. "What?" Officer Collins looked between us. "Ma'am, is this the individual who took the vehicle without permission?" "Yes." Her answer came instantly. "He waited until everyone was outside." The words hit me like ice water. "Rebecca." She interrupted loudly. "I begged him to stop." Every neighbor had turned to watch. Children stopped playing. Conversations ended. People slowly gathered near the sidewalk. Officer Collins addressed me calmly. "Sir, the registered owner reported this vehicle stolen." "It isn't stolen." Rebecca shook her head dramatically. "He has memory problems." Several neighbors exchanged uneasy looks. There it was. The story she'd been planting for months. Confused, forgetful, unsafe. Everything suddenly made sense. I looked directly at Officer Collins. My name is William Parker. I know. I live here. I understand. I helped purchase this vehicle. Rebecca laughed. You helped with a down payment years ago. She folded her arms. That doesn't make it yours. It also doesn't make it stolen. Officer Collins remained professional. Sir, did you have permission to drive the vehicle? Rebecca handed me the keys. Rebecca gasped loudly. No, I didn't. The words echoed across the driveway. I stared at her in disbelief. I've been looking for those keys all morning. She reached into her purse dramatically. I only have my spare. She held up another key fob. My heart sank. She had prepared everything. 2 keys, one hidden, one planted, everything rehearsed. Officer Collins looked uncomfortable. Sir, I didn't steal anything. Rebecca's voice became louder. I've been telling Michael for months this would happen. Michael finally stepped forward. His face was pale. Rebecca? She grabbed his arm. Tell them. Michael looked at me, then at the officers, then at Rebecca. His voice disappeared. Officer Collins sighed. Sir, please place your hands behind your back. For a second, I honestly believed I had misunderstood him. I'm sorry. Until we sort this out? There is nothing to sort out. I'm asking you to cooperate. I've done nothing wrong. Rebecca suddenly laughed. Not loudly, not hysterically, just one short, satisfied laugh. It cut through me more deeply than shouting ever could. She was enjoying this. The realization almost hurt more than the accusation. Mrs. Jenkins spoke from the crowd. Officer, I've known William for 20 years. Rebecca interrupted immediately. You don't know what he's become behind closed doors. Another neighbor whispered, I heard he was having memory issues. Rebecca had prepared them, exactly as Patricia predicted. Officer Collins took one careful step closer. I don't want to force this. I slowly placed my coffee cup on the hood of the SUV. I've spent my entire life teaching children to respect police officers. My voice remained steady. I won't resist. I turned around, placed both hands behind my back. The metal cuffs clicked shut, cold, heavy, tighter than I expected. I closed my eyes for just 1 second, not because of the pain, because of the humiliation. I had stood in front of thousands of students over nearly 4 decades. I had received community awards. I had buried my wife with dignity. I had raised children who weren't even mine. And now, I stood handcuffed in my own driveway while strangers watched. Someone in the crowd quietly raised a phone, then another. Within seconds, several people were recording. Rebecca lifted her own phone higher than everyone else's. She smiled directly into the camera. I told everyone the truth. My eyes searched for Michael. He stood frozen. Tears filled his eyes. But his feet never moved. His mouth never opened. Not one word. Not one step toward his father. That silence hurt more than the handcuffs ever could. Then I heard crying. Grandpa! Sophia. She pushed through the crowd. No! Rebecca grabbed her arm. Stop! He's innocent. Enough. Sophia struggled. You told him to move the car. Every sound around us seemed to disappear. Rebecca's smile vanished for only a fraction of a second. Then she recovered. She's confused. Officer Collins looked uncertain. Sophia tried again. My mom gave him... Rebecca pulled her backward. Go inside. I'm telling the truth. Rebecca's voice turned sharp enough that several neighbors flinched. I said, go inside. Sophia broke free long enough to look directly at me. I'm sorry, Grandpa. I smiled despite everything. It's okay. But it wasn't. Not even close. Officer Collins gently guided me toward the patrol car, just before we reached it. Another vehicle entered the subdivision. Not another patrol cruiser. A Black County Police SUV. The kind assigned only to senior command staff. It rolled slowly around the corner before stopping in front of our driveway. Every officer immediately straightened. One quietly said, "Chief's here." The driver's door opened. County Police Chief Marcus Johnson stepped out. He looked as though he had simply been passing through on another assignment. Then his eyes landed on me, on the handcuffs, on my face. Everything about him changed. He stopped walking. His expression drained of color. The entire neighborhood fell silent as the county police chief stared at me with disbelief. Then, without saying a word to anyone else, he began walking directly toward me. No one moved. The laughter stopped. The whispers disappeared. Even the children who had been playing in the middle of the street fell silent as County Police Chief Marcus Johnson walked toward me. Every officer on the scene instinctively straightened their posture. Officer Ethan Collins removed his sunglasses. Another patrol officer quietly muttered, "Morning, Chief." Marcus didn't answer. His eyes never left me. I had not seen him in nearly 3 months. The last time had been at a charity breakfast supporting foster families. We had hugged, shared coffee, and promised to have dinner soon. He had been busy with county responsibilities, and I had been volunteering more at the literacy center. Neither of us imagined our next meeting would happen like this. He stopped only a few feet away. His face looked as though someone had knocked the air from his lungs. Then his eyes dropped to the steel handcuffs around my wrists. For a long second, he simply stared. His jaw tightened. His breathing changed. I recognized that look immediately. It was the same expression I had seen decades earlier when he was a frightened 14-year-old boy trying desperately not to cry after learning his mother had died. Only now, instead of fear, I saw heartbreak. His voice came out barely above a whisper. "Mom?" Every person standing in that driveway heard it. Rebecca blinked. Officer Collins frowned. Michael looked confused. Marcus stepped even closer. "Mom?" He reached out with both hands and gently held my shoulders. "What happened to you?" For the first time since the handcuffs clicked shut, I felt my composure begin to crack. "I'm all right," I answered quietly. "No?" He shook his head. "No, you're not." His eyes filled with tears. "I leave this county for one morning meeting." He looked at the cuffs again. "And I come back to find you like this?" Rebecca finally found her voice. "Chief, I can explain." Marcus slowly turned toward her. There was no anger in his face yet, only confusion. "Who are you?" "I'm Rebecca Parker." She forced a polite smile. "I'm William's daughter-in-law." Marcus nodded once, then asked the question that changed everything. "Did you report this vehicle stolen?" "Yes." "You accused him?" "Yes." She folded her arms confidently. "He has been becoming forgetful for months." Marcus looked back at me, then back at her, then toward Officer Collins. "Remove those handcuffs." Officer Collins hesitated. "Chief," I said, "remove them." "Sir, dispatch advised." Marcus took one step closer. His voice remained calm, but every officer present recognized the tone. "Officer Collins?" "Yes, sir." "Remove the handcuffs immediately." The key slid into the lock. The cuffs opened. My wrists felt strangely light. Marcus gently rubbed the red marks left behind. His expression softened. "I'm sorry. You don't owe me an apology." "Yes." He looked around the driveway. "I do." Rebecca suddenly stepped forward. "Chief, with respect, you don't know the situation." Marcus slowly faced her again. "No. I know the man." Silence. "You may continue." Rebecca cleared her throat. "William has become increasingly unstable." Michael lowered his head. Rebecca continued confidently. "We've been worried for months." She gestured dramatically toward me. "He took our vehicle without permission." Marcus listened without interrupting. She interpreted his silence as agreement. He forgets conversations. He wanders. He changes stories. I've been trying to protect my family? Several neighbors nodded slightly. Exactly what Rebecca wanted. Marcus waited until she completely finished. Then he asked a single question. When did you marry into this family? Rebecca looked surprised. 8 years ago. Marcus nodded thoughtfully. I've known William Parker for 38. The neighborhood grew quiet again. Marcus continued. I met him when I was 14. Rebecca's confidence faded slightly. He has never lied to me. He has never stolen from me. He has never broken a promise to me. He has never abandoned me. Each sentence landed heavier than the last. Then Marcus looked directly into Rebecca's eyes. But someone who has known him for only 8 years, he paused, is asking me to believe he suddenly became a criminal. Rebecca swallowed. I'm asking you to believe the evidence. Marcus turned toward Officer Collins. What evidence do we have? Officer Collins opened his notebook. Registered owner reported the vehicle stolen. Who is the registered owner? Officer Collins looked down again. There are multiple names connected to financing records. Marcus raised an eyebrow. Multiple? Yes, sir. Rebecca interrupted quickly. That paperwork is outdated. Marcus looked at her. I wasn't asking you. She immediately fell silent. Marcus continued. What else? Officer Collins answered honestly. The complainant stated Mr. Parker took the vehicle without authorization. Did anyone witness her giving him permission? No, sir. Did anyone witness him taking the keys? No, sir. Marcus nodded slowly. Then he looked toward the crowd. I'd like everyone who witnessed this morning's events to remain available. Several neighbors exchanged nervous looks. Rebecca spoke again. This really isn't necessary. Marcus ignored her. Instead, he walked over to the navigator. He slowly circled the vehicle, looked inside, checked the driver's seat, opened the passenger door. Then he noticed something. The registration folder. Officer Collins frowned. It's missing. Marcus looked at Rebecca. Where is it? I don't know. You don't know? No. Marcus quietly closed the door. Then he turned toward Officer Collins. Body camera. Recording, sir. Good. Marcus looked around once more. Dispatch recording? Officer Collins nodded. Yes, sir. Marcus's eyes settled on Rebecca again. Excellent. She shifted uncomfortably. For the first time all morning, she looked uncertain. Meanwhile, Michael finally approached me. His face was pale. Dad? I looked at him. He couldn't hold my eyes. His voice broke. I didn't know she'd... He couldn't finish. I spoke quietly. But you stood there. He closed his eyes. I froze. Yes? I'm sorry. So was I. Those 3 words hit him harder than shouting ever could. Tears rolled down his face. I should have stopped it. I nodded slowly. You should have. Sophia ran across the driveway the moment the handcuffs came off. She wrapped both arms around me. I'm so sorry. I kissed the top of her head. You have nothing to apologize for. I tried to tell them. I know. I was scared. I know. She looked up at me with tears streaming down her cheeks. I should have screamed louder. I smiled gently. You were brave enough. Marcus watched us quietly. His own eyes were still wet. Captain Denise Walker's vehicle arrived less than 15 minutes later. Rebecca looked confused. Why is Internal Affairs here? Marcus answered without looking at her. Because an elderly citizen was publicly handcuffed. And because I intend to determine whether proper procedures were followed. Captain Walker stepped out carrying a tablet. Chief. Captain? She glanced toward me, then at the officers, then at Rebecca. What do we have? Marcus answered calmly. We have conflicting statements. We have missing documentation. We have an elderly homeowner. We have body camera footage. And we have a false report possibility. Rebecca immediately protested. I did not file a false report. Marcus looked at her. I said possibility. The emphasis was unmistakable. Officer Collins finally spoke again. His voice was filled with genuine regret. Mr. Parker. I turned toward him. I'm sorry? You were doing your job. I should have asked more questions. You relied on the information you received. Marcus looked at the young officer. We'll discuss procedures later. Officer Collins nodded. Yes, sir. Rebecca suddenly seemed to realize the situation was changing. She walked quickly toward Michael. We need to leave. Michael stared at her. Leave now. He didn't move. She grabbed his arm. Michael. He slowly pulled away. No. She looked stunned. What? I'm staying. Rebecca lowered her voice. Don't do this. Michael finally looked directly into her eyes. You told me Dad was becoming dangerous. He is. You told me he was stealing. He did. You told me he didn't have permission. Michael interrupted. Rebecca. His voice was barely audible. Did you give him the keys? For the first time since police arrived, Rebecca didn't answer immediately. That tiny hesitation was enough. Marcus noticed it. Captain Walker noticed it. Officer Collins noticed it. And so did every neighbor standing in that driveway. Marcus walked back toward me. His expression softened completely. I'm taking you somewhere. I smiled weakly. The station. He shook his head. No. Home. I looked around. I am home. Marcus smiled sadly. I know. Then he gently placed his hand on my shoulder. The home where you taught me what family really means. The neighborhood remained silent. Nobody understood. Not yet. Rebecca certainly didn't. She still believed the word mom had been some strange nickname. She had no idea that 38 years earlier, a frightened teenage boy had walked into my school carrying everything he owned inside one torn backpack. She had no idea that I had fought the foster care system to keep him from being separated from his younger sister. She had no idea that I had attended every graduation, every academy ceremony, every promotion. She had no idea that the man now wearing 4 stars on his collar had once cried himself to sleep in the bedroom across the hall from Michael. And she had absolutely no idea that everything she had carefully planned over the past several months was about to collapse under the weight of a truth she never bothered to uncover. Marcus looked at Captain Walker. I want every recording preserved. Already ordered. I want dispatch. Done. I want neighborhood security footage. We're requesting it now. Marcus nodded once. Then he quietly said, It's time everyone learns who William Parker really is. The silence that settled over my driveway after Marcus spoke felt different from the silence that had come before. Earlier, people had been silent because they believed I might be guilty. Now they were silent because they realized they knew almost nothing about me. Rebecca stood perfectly still, her phone still clutched in one hand. The confident smile she had worn only minutes earlier had disappeared completely. She looked from Marcus to me and back again, as if searching for some explanation that would allow her plan to survive. She wasn't going to find one. Marcus turned toward Captain Denise Walker. Captain, would you mind giving me 10 minutes before we continue? Captain Walker nodded. Of course. Marcus looked around at the officers. No one leaves. Yes, Chief. He then turned back to me. Mom, would you sit down? I smiled despite everything. You still call me that. He laughed softly through damp eyes. I always will. Someone in the crowd whispered, Did he just call him Mom again? Another neighbor answered quietly, I think he did. Rebecca finally spoke. This doesn't make any sense. Marcus looked directly at her. It will. He pulled 2 folding chairs from one of the nearby picnic tables and placed one beside mine. Then, without caring who watched, the county police chief sat beside me like the little boy I had first met 38 years earlier. "I think," he said quietly, "it's time everyone knows the truth." 38 years earlier, I was 30 years old and serving my 5th year as principal at Maple Ridge Elementary. It was a rainy Thursday afternoon in October. The office secretary knocked gently on my door. "William, come in. There are 2 children here." "What happened?" She hesitated. "Social services." I walked into the front office. A young caseworker stood beside a skinny black teenage boy and a little girl who couldn't have been older than 8. The boy's clothes were clean but worn. His backpack had one broken strap tied together with string. His little sister clung tightly to his jacket. Neither child spoke. The caseworker quietly explained everything. Their mother had died unexpectedly 3 nights earlier. No father was listed on either birth certificate. No relatives had agreed to take them. Temporary foster placement was being arranged. Temporary. I hated that word. The boy finally looked at me. His eyes weren't crying anymore. They looked empty. "What's your name?" I asked. "Marcus. And your sister, Lily." I smiled gently. "I'm William Parker." He nodded politely, then asked the question no 14-year-old should ever have to ask. "Are they gonna split us up?" I looked toward the caseworker. She lowered her eyes. That was answer enough. Marcus understood immediately. He wrapped one arm tighter around Lily. "You can't." The caseworker's voice cracked. "We're trying." "No." His voice became desperate. "You don't understand." Lily began crying. Marcus held her even tighter. "I promised Mom." Those 3 words stayed with me. I promised Mom. That evening, I drove home carrying their files in my briefcase. Denise met me at the front door. Long day. The longest. I told her everything over dinner. She listened quietly. When I finished, she asked only one question. "Are they together tonight?" "For now." She looked toward the empty bedroom that Michael had recently moved out of after starting college. "How long before they separate them?" I sighed. "Probably tomorrow." Denise stood without another word. She walked upstairs. A minute later, she called down. "William." I climbed the stairs. She stood inside Michael's old room. The bed was already made. Fresh sheets, clean curtains. She looked at me. "Call them?" I blinked. "Who?" "Social services." "What do I tell them?" She smiled the same smile that had convinced me to marry her 28 years earlier. "Tell them those children have a home." Marcus interrupted the story with a small laugh. "I thought it would only be one night." I smiled. So did we. The neighbors listened without making a sound. Even Officer Collins stood completely still. Marcus continued. One night became a week. A week became a month. Then William and Denise fought every piece of paperwork necessary to make sure Lily and I stayed together. He looked at Rebecca. They never treated us like foster children. He looked back at me. They treated us like family. I remembered Marcus's first night vividly. He refused to sleep. Around 2 a.m, I found him sitting on the floor outside Lily's bedroom. "What are you doing?" He shrugged. "Watching." "You need rest." "What if somebody comes?" "No one will." They always say that. I sat beside him on the hallway floor. For nearly an hour, we said nothing. Finally, he asked, "You got kids?" "1." "Where? College?" He nodded. "You must be proud." "I am." Another long silence. Then, almost too quietly to hear, "I wish my mom could have seen me graduate someday." I placed one hand on his shoulder. "She still will." He looked confused. "How?" "Because the kind of mother who raises a son willing to protect his little sister," I smiled, "doesn't stop believing in him." Marcus cried for the first time that night. Not loudly, just enough to let the grief out. Back in the present, several neighbors wiped away tears. Mrs. Jenkins covered her mouth. "Oh, William." Marcus smiled. "It gets better." Lily stayed with us until she was 18. Marcus until he finished college. Denise never separated birthday presents, Christmas stockings, school pictures. Everything included Michael Marcus and Lily equally. There was never our children and the foster children. There were simply kids who needed love. Marcus laughed again. "I remember my first report card." "So do I." "I got one B." "You were furious. I thought you'd be disappointed." I smiled. "What did I tell you?" Marcus answered immediately. "You said," he grinned, "character matters longer than grades." Several officers smiled. Marcus continued. "You celebrated that report card exactly the same way you celebrated Michael's." He looked around. "Pizza." I laughed. "Extra pepperoni." "You couldn't afford it." "We managed." "You skipped buying yourself a new coat." Rebecca slowly lowered her eyes. She had no answer for stories that couldn't be manipulated. Marcus looked toward Michael. "You remember?" Michael nodded silently. "I do." His voice sounded broken. "You were my brother." Marcus smiled sadly. "I still am." Michael covered his face. "I failed him." Marcus didn't answer, because there was nothing to say. Captain Walker quietly asked, "So, when did Mom begin?" Marcus laughed. "I was 15. Everyone looked curious. "I got suspended for fighting." I groaned. "You deserved it." "I did." The neighbors laughed softly. Marcus continued. "I expected William to yell." "What happened instead?" Officer Collins asked. Marcus smiled. "He sat me at the kitchen table. He made grilled cheese sandwiches. He waited until I finished eating. Then Marcus looked directly at me. "You asked me why I fought." I nodded. "You finally told me." Marcus swallowed. "I hit a boy because he said foster kids don't have real parents." The neighborhood became silent again. Marcus continued. "I expected William to tell me to ignore it." "What did he say?" Mrs. Jenkins whispered. Marcus smiled through tears. "He said," he looked at me, "a real parent is the one who stays." I remembered every word. Marcus laughed quietly. I looked at Denise, then at William. I accidentally said, "Thanks, Mom." The entire crowd smiled. Marcus shook his head. I was embarrassed. I apologized immediately, but William laughed. I did, because Denise had laughed first. She had pointed at me and said, "Well, congratulations. You've officially been promoted." Everyone laughed, including the officers. Marcus smiled warmly. I never stopped calling him Mom after that. Rebecca stood frozen. The title she had mocked now carried 38 years of history. Marcus's smile slowly faded. Then his voice became serious again. "The reason I'm standing here today," he looked directly at me, "is because this man refused to let two scared children disappear into the system. He paid for my SAT classes. He attended every football game. He taught me how to shave. He sat beside my hospital bed after I broke my leg. He stood in the front row when I graduated from the police academy." His voice cracked. "And when I pinned on my first badge," Marcus reached up and touched the stars on his uniform. "The first person I hugged wasn't a politician. It wasn't my commanding officer. It wasn't even my wife." He smiled gently. "It was Mom." By now, tears rolled freely down my face. I had never expected to hear those memories spoken aloud. Not like this. Not in front of strangers. Not in front of the son who had forgotten so much. Marcus stood. He slowly turned toward Rebecca. "You spent months convincing people William Parker was becoming confused." She said nothing. "You spent months questioning his character." Still nothing. You publicly celebrated while he was handcuffed. Rebecca finally whispered, I didn't know. Marcus nodded. No, you didn't. Then his expression hardened for the first time that morning. But you never cared enough to find out. A heavy silence settled over the neighborhood because everyone understood something now. Rebecca had investigated bank accounts. She had investigated property records. She had investigated insurance paperwork. She had investigated vehicle ownership. But she had never once investigated the man she wanted to destroy. If she had, she would have discovered that the quiet old grandfather she treated like an obstacle had spent his entire life building people instead of wealth. And among those people was the county police chief now standing between her lies and the truth. The atmosphere in the neighborhood changed completely after Marcus finished telling our story. An hour earlier, people had watched from a distance, whispering to one another while I stood in handcuffs. Now those same neighbors looked at me with expressions filled with regret. Mrs. Darlene Jenkins was the first to step forward. She wiped tears from her eyes before speaking. William, I looked at her. I'm so sorry. You don't owe me an apology. Yes, I do. She shook her head. I stood there. Her voice cracked. I watched. She looked down at the ground. I should have said something. I placed my hand gently on her shoulder. You believed what you were told. That doesn't make it right. No, it doesn't. One by one, other neighbors slowly approached. Mr. Collins, who had lived across the street for almost 15 years, removed his baseball cap. I should have spoken up too. Another neighbor quietly admitted, I thought maybe Rebecca knew something we didn't. An elderly couple from the corner house apologized for believing the rumors about my memory. I accepted every apology with the same answer. Let's make sure we don't judge so quickly next time. Marcus watched silently. He knew I meant every word. Captain Denise Walker opened her tablet. Chief? Marcus turned. We've already received the dispatch recording. Good. And Officer Collins's body camera footage has automatically uploaded to the county server. Marcus nodded. I also want every available neighborhood security camera preserved before anything is overwritten. Captain Walker looked toward several homes. We'll start immediately. Rebecca suddenly stepped forward. This is getting ridiculous. Nobody answered. She looked around the crowd. You all know I've been taking care of William. No one spoke. She tried again. You've seen how forgetful he's become. Again, silence. The silence frightened her more than arguments ever could, because for the first time, no one believed her. Captain Walker approached Rebecca calmly. Mrs. Parker. Yes. I'll need your phone. Rebecca frowned. My phone. The one you used while recording today's incident. Rebecca instinctively pulled it closer to her chest. Why? It may contain evidence relevant to the investigation. I don't have to. You absolutely do. Captain Walker's tone remained professional. If the recording supports your account, it will help you. Rebecca hesitated. Marcus watched carefully. After several long seconds, Rebecca finally handed over the phone. Captain Walker immediately placed it into an evidence bag. Thank you. Rebecca forced a smile. I have nothing to hide. Marcus quietly replied, We'll see. Officer Ethan Collins walked over carrying his notebook. He looked more uncomfortable than ever. Chief? Yes? I'd like permission to explain my actions. Marcus nodded. Go ahead. Officer Collins faced me first. Mr. Parker? He swallowed. When dispatch received the call, we were advised the reporting party stated an elderly family member suffering memory decline had taken a vehicle without permission. Several neighbors exchanged surprised looks. Officer Collins continued. The dispatcher also informed responding units that the complainant feared the subject might attempt to flee. I frowned. Flee? Captain Walker quickly made a note. Marcus asked quietly, "Was there any indication of violence?" "No, sir." "Any weapons reported?" "No." "Any threats?" "No." Marcus folded his arms. "Then why were handcuffs used?" Officer Collins answered honestly. "Because the complainant insisted the suspect had become unpredictable." Every eye slowly turned toward Rebecca. She immediately shook her head. "I never," Captain Walker interrupted. "We'll compare that statement with the 911 recording." Rebecca fell silent. Marcus walked toward the patrol vehicle. He opened the rear passenger door. "William?" "Yes?" "I'd like you to sit inside for just a few minutes." I smiled. I've spent enough time in police cars today. A few officers chuckled softly. Marcus smiled too. Fair enough. Instead, he guided me to a shaded folding chair beneath a maple tree. Sophia immediately sat beside me. She refused to let go of my hand. "You okay, Grandpa?" "I am now." She leaned her head against my shoulder. "I was so scared." "I know." "I thought they were taking you away." "I thought so too." She looked down. "I almost called you." "I know." "My phone?" She stopped. "What is it?" "I recorded something." Marcus overheard. His head immediately turned. "What did you say?" Sophia looked nervous. I wasn't trying to." Marcus crouched beside her. "Take your time." She nodded slowly. "This morning," she looked toward Rebecca. "I thought Mom was acting strange." Rebecca stiffened. Sophia continued. "So I started recording with my phone." The entire driveway became silent again. Marcus asked carefully, "How much did you record?" "I don't know." Rebecca suddenly stepped forward. "She doesn't know what she's talking about." Sophia looked frightened. Marcus immediately stood between them. "She'll answer without interruption." Rebecca clenched her jaw. Sophia unlocked her phone with trembling fingers. "My battery almost died." She opened the video gallery. "There." Marcus looked at Captain Walker. "Evidence bag?" Captain Walker carefully accepted the phone. "We'll make a forensic copy immediately." Rebecca's breathing noticeably quickened. Michael noticed. He quietly stared at his wife. Something in his expression had changed. For months, confusion had hidden behind his eyes. Now, questions had replaced it. Marcus turned toward Michael. "I need to ask you something." Michael nodded weakly. "Did your father have permission to move the SUV today?" Michael hesitated. Rebecca quickly answered, "He doesn't know." Marcus didn't even look at her. "I'm asking Michael." Several painful seconds passed. Finally, Michael spoke. "I thought—" His voice cracked. "I thought Rebecca asked him." Rebecca spun toward him. "Michael." He looked at her. "You told me this morning," Rebecca interrupted loudly. "You misunderstood." Michael shook his head. "No. I heard you." "You handed him the keys." Rebecca's face went pale. You said—" Michael closed his eyes as he remembered. "William, would you mind moving the navigator?" Nobody moved. Nobody spoke. Rebecca looked desperately around the driveway. No one came to her defense. Captain Walker's radio crackled. "Captain," she answered. "Go ahead." A detective's voice came through. "We've already reviewed the dispatch recording." Marcus immediately stepped closer. "What do we have?" The complainant repeatedly stated the vehicle was being stolen. Rebecca swallowed hard. The detective continued. She also claimed the suspect had no permission whatsoever to operate the vehicle. Marcus looked slowly toward Rebecca. "Continue." "We're sending the audio now." Captain Walker's tablet beeped. She pressed play. Rebecca's recorded voice echoed across the quiet neighborhood. "Please hurry. My father-in-law is stealing my SUV. I think he's becoming dangerous. I've tried taking the keys away." I don't know what he'll do. Every sentence landed harder than the last. Then came another line. If you don't get here quickly, he might disappear with it. Officer Collins quietly lowered his head. Marcus looked at Rebecca. Would you like to revise your statement? She shook her head desperately. It wasn't supposed to. She stopped herself. Marcus noticed immediately. It wasn't supposed to. What? Rebecca remained silent. At that exact moment, Captain Walker received another notification. She looked down, then back up. Chief? Yes. We've reviewed the first 3 minutes of Officer Collins' body camera. What does it show? Captain Walker turned the screen toward Marcus. Without audio, everyone could clearly see Rebecca smiling while I stood beside the SUV. Then, the footage captured something nobody expected. Rebecca reached into her purse, removed a key, looked at it, then quietly slipped it back into her purse just seconds before officers approached me. Marcus replayed the clip twice. Officer Collins frowned. I never noticed that. Captain Walker zoomed in. There are definitely 2 separate key fobs. Rebecca closed her eyes. Marcus slowly looked up. Interesting. Meanwhile, another detective walked over carrying a small evidence envelope. Chief? Marcus accepted it. What is this? We searched the SUV. Rebecca suddenly looked terrified. Marcus noticed immediately. The detective continued. Hidden underneath the driver's seat. Marcus opened the envelope. Inside, the missing vehicle registration, along with the insurance documents, and something else. A spare key, the exact key Rebecca claimed had been lost. Marcus stared at the evidence, then slowly looked toward Rebecca. Can you explain why these documents were hidden under the driver's seat? Rebecca opened her mouth. Nothing came out. Michael whispered, "Oh my God." I closed my eyes, not because I felt victorious, because every terrible suspicion Patricia and I had shared over the past several weeks was proving true. Rebecca hadn't simply lied in the moment. She had carefully prepared this trap, and little by little, every piece of it was beginning to unravel. No one said a word after the detective held up the evidence bag. Inside were 3 items: the missing registration, the insurance documents, and the spare key Rebecca had insisted she could not find. The morning sun was still bright overhead, but the warmth had disappeared from the driveway. The air felt heavy, as if the entire neighborhood had suddenly realized they were standing inside a courtroom instead of a summer block party. Rebecca's shoulders stiffened. Michael looked from the evidence bag to his wife with an expression I had never seen before. Not anger, not disbelief. Recognition, the kind that comes when dozens of confusing moments suddenly fit together into one painful picture. Captain Denise Walker accepted the evidence from the detective. Where exactly were these located? Beneath the driver's seat, tucked inside a zippered document pouch. She nodded. Were photographs taken before recovery? Yes, ma'am. Good. Marcus looked toward Officer Ethan Collins. Was the vehicle searched before Mr. Parker was detained? No, Chief? And if it had been, Officer Collins answered honestly. We would have found the registration immediately. Marcus didn't criticize him. Instead, he simply nodded. Thank you for being truthful. Officer Collins lowered his eyes. I wish I had done more. Rebecca finally broke the silence. This doesn't prove anything. Captain Walker turned toward her. It proves someone hid official documents inside the vehicle. I don't know who did that, Marcus asked calmly. Who normally drives the Navigator? I do. Who keeps the spare keys? She hesitated. Usually me. And who removed the registration from the glove compartment? I didn't. Marcus nodded slowly. Then someone else with access to the vehicle deliberately moved them. Rebecca folded her arms. Maybe William did. For the first time all morning, Marcus's expression hardened. You want us to believe William removed the documents. He held up the evidence bag, hid them under the driver's seat, called the police on himself, and then calmly waited in the driveway to be arrested. Rebecca looked away. The explanation sounded absurd even to her. Michael stepped backward until he leaned against the porch railing. He covered his mouth with one trembling hand. My son looked as though he could barely breathe. I had seen that expression once before. He was 16 years old when a drunk driver struck Denise's car at an intersection. She survived that accident, but Michael had spent hours believing she wouldn't. He wore that same helpless expression now. Not because someone else was in danger, because he was beginning to understand what he had allowed to happen. He walked slowly toward me. "Dad?" I looked at him. "I need to ask you something." "Go ahead." His voice shook. When the garage code changed." I nodded. "You didn't know it?" "No." "When the bank called?" "No." "When Rebecca said you were forgetting things?" "I never knew she was telling people that." He closed his eyes. "I thought—" He couldn't finish. "You thought she was protecting me." A tear rolled down his face. "Yes. I wanted to believe that." I placed a gentle hand on his shoulder. "So did I." Captain Walker approached Rebecca again. "Mrs. Parker, I'd like you to explain something." Rebecca crossed her arms. "My attorney would tell me not to answer questions." "That's your right." Captain Walker's voice remained composed. "But I'd still like to ask." Rebecca remained silent. Captain Walker held up her tablet. "Several neighbors state you've spent months telling them Mr. Parker was becoming mentally confused. I was concerned. You also contacted his volunteer coordinator." Rebecca looked startled. Mrs. Howard, the Literacy Center coordinator, had quietly arrived after hearing about the incident from another volunteer. She stepped forward. "Rebecca called me 2 weeks ago." Rebecca's face drained of color. Mrs. Howard continued. "She said William might begin forgetting appointments. I wanted us to keep an eye on him." Captain Walker asked, "Did Mr. Parker ever miss appointments?" Mrs. Howard smiled sadly. "In 15 years?" She shook her head. "Not once." Another neighbor raised her hand. "I should probably say something." Everyone turned. It was Linda Harris from 3 houses away. "Rebecca asked me if I'd noticed William repeating himself." Marcus asked, "What did you tell her?" Linda answered honestly, "I hadn't." Rebecca quickly interrupted. "I was asking because I cared." Captain Walker looked at her. "Or because you wanted witnesses?" Rebecca said nothing. The detective who had searched the SUV returned with another folder. "Chief?" Marcus accepted it. "What now?" "We checked the home's exterior security cameras." Rebecca suddenly looked panicked. "There are cameras?" Michael frowned. "You forgot." Rebecca stared at him. He looked confused. "Dad had those installed after Mom passed." I nodded. "They cover the driveway." Rebecca whispered under her breath. "Oh no." "Marcus heard it? So you weren't aware they were still operating?" Rebecca didn't answer. The detective continued. "The footage has already been downloaded." Captain Walker asked, "What does it show?" The detective opened his laptop. "Would you like to see it?" Marcus nodded. "Play it." Everyone gathered around the screen. The timestamp showed 8:14 a.m. Rebecca walked into the garage alone. She looked around carefully. Then she opened the navigator. She reached inside the glove compartment, removed the registration folder, looked toward the house, then crouched beside the driver's seat. When she stood again, the folder was gone. Another clip played. At 8:19 a.m., Rebecca removed a key from her purse, placed it beneath the driver's seat, closed the door, walked calmly back inside. No one spoke. The evidence required no explanation. Officer Collins slowly removed his hat. "Oh." Captain Walker looked toward Rebecca. "Do you wish to change your statement now?" Rebecca stared at the ground, still nothing. Michael looked as though someone had struck him. He watched the video twice, then a third time. Finally, he whispered, "You planned it." Rebecca looked at him desperately. "Michael, you planned all of it. It wasn't like that. You hid the paperwork. I was trying to. You called the police. You don't understand." His voice suddenly became louder than anyone had ever heard. "No, I understand perfectly." He pointed toward me. "You let them handcuff my father." Rebecca reached for him. "Please." He stepped backward. "Don't touch me." Sophia, still sitting beside me quietly, began crying again. She wasn't crying because Rebecca had been caught. She was crying because she was watching her family break apart. I wrapped one arm around her shoulders. "Easy, sweetheart." She shook her head. "I don't know what happens now." Neither did I. Marcus took a slow breath. "Captain." "Yes, Chief." "I believe we now have probable cause to continue this investigation as a criminal matter." Rebecca looked up sharply. "What?" Captain Walker nodded. "Based on the evidence currently available," she counted carefully, "a knowingly false emergency report, possible evidence tampering, false statements to responding officers, and potential financial fraud that appears connected." Rebecca whispered, "I never wanted." Marcus interrupted gently. "It doesn't matter what you wanted. It matters what you did." Just then, attorney Patricia Bennett's car pulled into the subdivision. She stepped out carrying a leather briefcase. When she saw me standing beneath the tree instead of in handcuffs, relief washed across her face. She hurried over. "William." "I'm all right." She hugged me tightly. "I was afraid I was too late." Marcus smiled. "Perfect timing, Patricia." She looked around at the officers. "The evidence?" Marcus handed her the summary. She read silently for several moments, then looked directly at Rebecca. "I warned someone this would happen." Rebecca frowned. "What?" Patricia closed the folder. "I warned William weeks ago that someone appeared to be building a false paper trail." Michael looked at Patricia. "You knew." She nodded sadly. "I hoped I was wrong." "You didn't tell me." "I wasn't representing you." Michael lowered his head. "No. You were protecting my father." Patricia turned toward me. "William?" "Yes. You kept your notebook." I smiled faintly. "I wrote everything down." Her expression softened. "Good." I reached into my desk drawer inside the house earlier that morning before breakfast, slipping the notebook into my shoulder bag out of habit. Now I handed it to her. She carefully opened the first page. Every date, every conversation, every changed garage code, every bank issue, every rumor, every missing key, every incident was recorded in my own handwriting weeks before the police ever arrived. Patricia looked at Marcus. "This establishes a timeline." Marcus nodded, "and a very compelling one." He closed the notebook gently, then looked around the quiet neighborhood. "Sometimes justice doesn't begin with dramatic evidence." He glanced at me. "Sometimes it begins with an honest man who simply tells the truth every single day." I looked at the notebook in Patricia's hands. I hadn't written those notes to defeat anyone. I wrote them because an old-school principle believed facts mattered. Now, those simple pages were becoming the strongest witness I had. And Rebecca was beginning to realize that every lie she had carefully constructed was about to collide with months of documented truth. For the first time since the police cars arrived, no one was looking at me. Every eye in the driveway had shifted to Rebecca. She stood alone near the front steps, her carefully styled hair blowing gently in the warm Georgia breeze. Only a few hours earlier, she had stood in that exact spot smiling into her phone while I was being handcuffed. Now her phone sat inside an evidence bag. The smile was gone. And so was the certainty she had carried for months. Captain Denise Walker handed Sophia's phone to a digital evidence technician who had just arrived. "I want a forensic copy made immediately." The technician nodded. "We won't alter the original." Sophia looked nervous. "I didn't know if I should record." Marcus smiled gently. You did the right thing. I was scared. I know. I thought maybe Grandpa would need proof. I reached over and squeezed her hand. You were thinking farther ahead than most adults. She gave me a weak smile. I learned that from you. Those words warmed my heart, more than she could possibly understand. The technician connected Sophia's phone to a secure forensic device. Within minutes, the first video appeared on the tablet screen. The timestamp read 8:07 a.m. Several officers gathered around. Marcus motioned everyone closer. If we're going to review this, everyone hears it together. Rebecca looked toward the street, almost as if she were considering walking away. Captain Walker noticed. I'd advise staying where you are. Rebecca slowly nodded. The recording began. The camera pointed mostly toward the kitchen counter because Sophia had slipped the phone into a decorative basket while pretending to charge it. The picture wasn't perfect. The audio was. Rebecca's voice came first. Is he downstairs yet? Michael answered. Not yet. Rebecca laughed softly. Good. Michael sounded uncomfortable. I still don't like this. Rebecca sighed impatiently. You don't have to like it. You only have to stay quiet. Every person watching the video became perfectly still. Michael lowered his eyes. Rebecca closed hers. The recording continued. What if Dad gets embarrassed? Rebecca answered immediately. He'll survive. And if he doesn't cooperate, he always cooperates. That's the problem. Michael asked quietly, Are you sure this isn't going too far? Rebecca laughed again. No, I'm finally solving the problem. The video skipped ahead a few seconds. Rebecca spoke again. When I hand him the key, several officers looked at one another. He'll move the SUV exactly where I need it. Michael whispered, Rebecca, relax. The police will already be on the way. My heart skipped, even though I had already suspected it. Hearing her say the words aloud still hurt. Officer Collins quietly removed his notebook. He no longer needed written statements. Rebecca had provided her own. The recording continued. Michael asked, What happens after that? Rebecca answered without hesitation. Simple. They'll think he's stealing the vehicle. Michael's breathing became audible. And then, Rebecca replied casually, then everyone finally sees what I've been dealing with. Captain Walker paused the video. The driveway remained silent. Officer Collins slowly shook his head. She planned the entire response. Marcus looked toward Rebecca. Would you like us to continue? Rebecca whispered, No. Captain Walker answered, We're going to. The next recording began. Timestamp 8:23 a.m. This one lasted less than 2 minutes. Sophia's hidden phone had captured Rebecca standing near the front door after I walked outside with my coffee. Rebecca looked toward the driveway, then directly at Michael. Remember, if anybody asks, Michael answered quietly. I know. Rebecca interrupted. No. Say it. Michael hesitated. Finally, you never gave him permission, Rebecca smiled. Exactly. Michael covered his face with both hands. He couldn't bear to hear himself. I couldn't bear it either. Not because he was guilty of creating the lie, but because he had become weak enough to repeat it. Marcus paused the recording again. He looked at Michael. I'm giving you one opportunity. Michael nodded slowly. Were you pressured? Michael answered honestly. Yes. Rebecca spun toward him. Michael. He ignored her. I told her this was wrong. You heard it. I said Dad didn't deserve this. Rebecca shook her head desperately. You're twisting everything. Michael looked at her. No. My whole life. His voice broke. I've been twisting myself to keep you happy. Those words stunned everyone. Even Rebecca looked shocked. Patricia Bennett quietly stepped beside me. William. Yes. There's more. I looked at the technician. Another file had appeared. Sophia frowned. I forgot about that one. Marcus asked, What is it? I don't know. I never watched it. The technician opened the file. Timestamp 3 days earlier. The picture was shaky. Sophia had apparently forgotten to stop recording after placing her phone inside her backpack. The backpack sat near the dining room. Rebecca entered the room alone. She picked up her phone and placed it on speaker. A woman's voice answered. Did you finish everything? Rebecca smiled. Almost. The woman laughed. What about the old man? Rebecca answered coldly. By next week, everyone will think he's losing his mind. The detective immediately made another note. The unknown caller continued. And the property? Rebecca replied. Michael still feels guilty. But guilt is easier to manage than divorce. The driveway became silent again. Michael looked physically ill. Rebecca had never told him about this conversation. The caller asked another question. What if the father-in-law fights back? Rebecca laughed. He won't? He still believes we're family. Those words hit me harder than any insult she had ever spoken directly to my face, because they were true, even after everything. I had still believed we were family. The recording continued. The unknown woman asked, So the police thing is still happening? Rebecca answered, Everything's ready. I've already hidden the registration. I moved the spare key. I've been telling neighbors he's forgetful for months. By the time officers arrive, she laughed again, everyone will already believe me. Captain Walker stopped the recording. No one moved. Officer Collins quietly whispered, My God. Marcus turned toward the evidence technician. Save everything. Already completed. Create certified copies. Yes, Chief. Patricia looked at Captain Walker. This establishes intent. Captain Walker nodded. Premeditation. Marcus corrected gently. In the context of the false report. Yes. Rebecca suddenly burst into tears. Real tears. Not the dramatic kind she had displayed before neighbors. She looked at Michael. I'm sorry. He stared at her. For what? I never meant for him to get hurt, Michael answered quietly. You laughed. Rebecca froze. You laughed while my father was in handcuffs. She began crying harder. I panicked. Michael slowly shook his head. No. You celebrated. Every word landed like another crack across the life they had built together. Sophia quietly stood. She walked toward her mother. Rebecca reached out hopefully. Sophia? Instead of hugging her, Sophia asked one simple question. Why? Rebecca couldn't answer. Sophia tried again. Grandpa reads with kids who don't have parents. He helped me with every school project. He never yelled at you. He never even argued. Her voice trembled. So why? Rebecca looked completely defeated. I wanted... She stopped. What? Sophia whispered. Rebecca lowered her eyes. The house. Nobody reacted. The confession almost sounded too small. Sophia stared at her. You did all this for a house. Rebecca covered her face. I thought... You thought what? I thought if William left, everything would finally belong to us. Sophia stepped backward. Tears rolled down her cheeks. I don't know you. Those 5 words shattered Rebecca more completely than handcuffs ever could. Marcus quietly looked around the neighborhood. Hours earlier, everyone had watched an innocent man lose his dignity. Now, they were watching the truth rebuild it piece by piece. But Marcus knew something the rest of us didn't yet know. The investigation was no longer just about a false police report. Captain Walker had quietly received another message from the Financial Crimes Unit. She looked down at her tablet, then slowly looked back up. Her expression had changed. Marcus noticed immediately. What is it? Captain Walker answered softly enough that only those standing nearby could hear. I think we've just found something much bigger. Captain Denise Walker looked at her tablet for several more seconds before raising her eyes to meet Marcus's. The expression on her face told me this was no longer just about a false police report. Something else had surfaced, something bigger. Marcus spoke quietly. What did Financial Crimes find? Captain Walker turned the screen so only Marcus, Patricia Bennett, and I could see it. They completed a preliminary review of the banking records Attorney Bennett requested. Patricia frowned. Already? I marked it as an emergency because the incident involved a potentially fraudulent report connected to property ownership. Marcus nodded. What are we looking at? Captain Walker took a slow breath. There appear to be multiple electronic transfers over the last 18 months. I looked confused. What kind of transfers? She answered carefully. Money moved from accounts connected to household expenses into an account held solely in Rebecca Parker's name. Michael's face lost what little color it still had. What? Captain Walker continued. The transfers were individually small enough not to trigger automatic fraud alerts. Patricia immediately understood. Structuring. Captain Walker nodded. Exactly. Michael stared at his wife. Rebecca. She didn't answer. He looked back toward Captain Walker. How much? We don't have an exact total yet. She glanced at the report. Our preliminary estimate exceeds $180,000. The number hung in the air. Mrs. Jenkins gasped. Officer Collins looked stunned. Even Marcus blinked in surprise. I closed my eyes, not because of the money, because Denise and I had spent 40 years saving carefully, believing every dollar represented another piece of security for our family. To learn that those savings had quietly disappeared hurt far more than I expected. Michael shook his head repeatedly. No. His voice was barely audible. That's impossible. Captain Walker remained calm. The investigation is still ongoing. Michael looked at Rebecca. Tell them. Rebecca whispered. It wasn't stealing. Everyone looked at her. I invested it. Patricia immediately asked, with whose permission? Rebecca stayed silent. Marcus folded his arms. Mrs. Parker, You had authorization. No. Michael took one step backward. You took our money. Rebecca looked desperate. I was trying to grow it. Our money. Our future. Our future. Michael almost laughed. My father's retirement. Rebecca's tears began falling again. I was going to put it back. Patricia quietly replied, people rarely need to put back money they had permission to use. Captain Walker continued reading. There is another issue. Marcus looked at her. What now? Several electronic signatures appear inconsistent with known samples. Patricia slowly nodded. The insurance paperwork. Captain Walker looked toward me. Mr. Parker. Yes. Did you ever authorize Rebecca to sign documents on your behalf? No. Did you give anyone power of attorney? No. Did you approve changes to homeowner insurance? No. She entered each answer into her report. Michael rubbed both hands across his face. I signed some things. Everyone looked at him. I thought, he swallowed, I thought Rebecca had already discussed everything with Dad. Patricia asked gently, did you actually see William sign? Michael slowly lowered his head. No. Rebecca whispered, I told him you already had. Michael looked at her with complete disbelief. You lied to me too. She began crying harder. I didn't want to lose everything. Michael answered quietly. You've already lost everything. Officer Ethan Collins stepped forward. Chief? Marcus turned. Yes. I'd like to file a supplemental statement. Marcus nodded. Go ahead. Officer Collins stood straight. For the record, He looked directly at me. When I approached Mr. Parker, he was completely cooperative. He answered every question. He never attempted to flee. He never resisted. He never raised his voice. He voluntarily placed his hands behind his back. Captain Walker typed each sentence. Officer Collins continued. If I had known the reporting history involved a months-long campaign questioning his mental condition, he paused. I would have requested a supervisor before making an arrest. Marcus placed one hand on the young officer's shoulder. You're learning. Officer Collins nodded. I won't make the same mistake again. I smiled gently. That's all any teacher can ask. He looked surprised. You're still teaching me. I laughed softly. Retirement doesn't stop habits. Several officers smiled. The tension eased for the first time all day. Meanwhile, detectives finished interviewing neighbors one by one. Mrs. Jenkins described Rebecca repeatedly mentioning my supposed forgetfulness. Mr. Collins confirmed hearing Rebecca say she feared I would wander off in the SUV. Linda Harris admitted Rebecca had asked multiple neighbors whether they believed I should still be driving. Another resident recalled Rebecca saying, "One day, something terrible is going to happen." Piece by piece, the picture became clearer. Rebecca hadn't simply invented one lie. She had spent months preparing witnesses to believe it. Captain Walker approached Marcus again. Chief? Yes, I believe we have sufficient evidence to recommend criminal charges. Marcus nodded. What are we considering? Captain Walker reviewed her notes carefully. Knowingly filing a false police report, making false statements to law enforcement, evidence tampering, possible forgery, and financial crimes pending further investigation. Rebecca closed her eyes. Michael whispered, "Oh God." Marcus walked toward Rebecca. His tone remained respectful. Mrs. Parker. She looked up slowly. I need to ask one final question. She nodded weakly. When William Parker was placed in handcuffs? Marcus paused. Why did you laugh? The question caught everyone off guard. Rebecca stared at the ground for a long time, long enough that I wondered if she would answer at all. Finally, she spoke. I thought, her voice trembled. I thought once everyone believed he was a criminal. She began crying. He'd finally leave. Silence. No one moved. No one interrupted. Marcus asked quietly, and then, Rebecca whispered, the house would be ours. Those words echoed through the neighborhood, not because they were loud, because they were empty. An entire family destroyed. For a house, Michael slowly walked toward me. He stopped only a few feet away. For several seconds he couldn't speak. Then, without warning, my 42-year-old son dropped to his knees in the driveway. Dad! Tears streamed down his face. I'm sorry. Every neighbor watched in complete silence. I failed you. I looked down at the little boy I used to carry on my shoulders after baseball games. He wasn't little anymore, but in that moment, he looked just as lost. I should have believed you. I should have protected you. I should have stopped this months ago. He lowered his head until it nearly touched the pavement. I don't deserve forgiveness. My heart hurt more than it had all morning, because despite everything, he was still my son. I knelt slowly despite my aching knees, placed both hands gently on his shoulders. Michael. He looked up through tears. I need you to hear something. He nodded. You failed. His face crumpled. But failure? I took a slow breath. Is not the end. He stared at me. It becomes the end only when you refuse to tell the truth. More tears rolled down his cheeks. I'll tell everything. I know. I'll help fix this. I know. I'll spend the rest of my life making it right. I smiled sadly. That part. I gently squeezed his shoulder. We'll take time. Sophia quietly wrapped her arms around both of us. The three of us remained there together in the driveway. For the first time since Denise died, I felt my family holding one another again, broken, hurting, but honest. Marcus looked away briefly, giving us privacy. Patricia quietly wiped tears from her eyes. Even Officer Collins removed his hat out of respect. Captain Walker waited until we stood again. "Chief," Marcus nodded. "I'm ready." She spoke clearly. "Based upon the evidence collected today, Rebecca Parker is no longer being interviewed solely as a complainant." Rebecca looked up slowly. Captain Walker continued. "She is now the subject of an active criminal investigation." Rebecca closed her eyes. The realization finally settled over her. Everything she had spent months building had collapsed in a single morning. But Marcus knew the legal process wasn't over, not even close. As detectives prepared additional paperwork, another officer approached, carrying a folder recovered from the county courthouse. Marcus opened it. His expression immediately changed. Patricia noticed. "What is it?" Marcus looked toward me. "William, there appears to be one more document." I frowned. "What document?" Marcus slowly turned the folder around. It was a property filing, one I had never seen before, and someone had attempted to change far more than ownership of a house. For a moment, no one spoke. Marcus held the courthouse folder in both hands, staring at the first page before looking back at me. I recognized that look. It was the same expression he wore years earlier, whenever he had to tell a frightened victim something difficult but important. "William," he said carefully, "I need to ask you something before anyone draws conclusions." "Go ahead." "Have you signed any property documents during the past year?" "No." "Not at a bank?" "No." "Not with a notary?" "No." "Not at home?" I shook my head. The only legal papers I've signed in years were updates to my medical directives with Patricia. Patricia Bennett nodded immediately. "I handled those personally." Marcus looked down at the folder again. "Then we have a serious problem." Captain Walker stepped beside him. "What is it?" Marcus opened the file. "This is a quitclaim deed." Patricia reached for it. "Let me see." She adjusted her glasses and read silently. The color slowly drained from her face. "Oh." Michael looked frightened. "What?" Patricia turned one page. "This document attempts to transfer William's remaining ownership interest in the house." Michael frowned. "To me?" Patricia looked up. No. The silence that followed seemed endless. "To Rebecca." Michael's face went completely blank. "What?" Rebecca stared at the ground. Patricia continued reading. "It bears William's signature." I didn't even need to look. "That's not my signature?" "I know." Patricia compared it with another document from her briefcase. "The slant is wrong. The pressure is different. The spacing is inconsistent." She sighed heavily. "This is almost certainly forged." Captain Walker immediately looked at the detective. "I want this submitted to the document examiner." "It's already being prepared." Marcus asked quietly. "Has it been recorded?" The detective nodded. "It was filed with the county clerk 3 weeks ago." My heart skipped. 3 weeks. While I was still drinking coffee on my porch and believing my biggest problem was family tension. Someone had already tried to take my home. Michael staggered backward. "I don't understand." He looked at Rebecca. "You told me we were updating insurance paperwork." Rebecca said nothing. "You asked me to drive you to the courthouse." Still nothing. "You told me Dad already agreed." Silence. Michael's voice rose. "Did you use that trip to file this?" Rebecca finally whispered. "Yes." He looked as though someone had struck him. "You forged my father's name." She covered her face. "I thought once it was done." "You thought what?" He'd never know. Michael laughed once. It wasn't a happy laugh. It was the sound a heart makes when it realizes it has been living inside a lie. Patricia closed the folder carefully. William. Yes. I want you to hear this from me. I nodded. This document has no legal effect if the signature is proven fraudulent. I let out a slow breath. So the house isn't gone? No. She smiled reassuringly. Not even close. Marcus added, and now that we have probable cause, the county recorder will place a hold on any future transfers until this investigation is complete. For the first time that day, I felt something I hadn't felt in months. Security. Not because of the law, because the truth was finally standing beside me instead of hiding behind closed doors. Rebecca suddenly looked at Patricia. I wasn't trying to steal it. Patricia met her eyes. Then why wasn't William present? Rebecca couldn't answer. Why wasn't Michael listed? No answer. Why did you file it without telling anyone? Rebecca's shoulders slumped. There isn't a good explanation, is there? Rebecca quietly shook her head. Sophia had remained silent through the entire conversation. She now walked slowly toward her mother. Her voice was soft. So, every time Grandpa asked why things were changing, Rebecca looked up. You already knew. Rebecca's eyes filled with tears. Yes, you already knew you were trying to take his house. Another quiet nod. Sophia wiped her own tears. You made me think Grandpa was forgetting things. I'm sorry. You made Dad think Grandpa was confused. I'm sorry. You made the neighbors believe Grandpa wasn't safe. Rebecca began crying harder. I'm so sorry. Sophia looked at her for several long seconds. Then she asked the question no adult had asked yet. Did you ever feel guilty? Rebecca closed her eyes. At first, the answer broke something inside everyone listening. At first, meaning there had been a moment when she knew the difference between right and wrong and chose to keep going anyway. Michael slowly sat down on the porch steps. He buried his face in his hands. I keep replaying everything. No one interrupted him. The garage code, the bank, the rumors, the insurance papers. He looked up at me. Dad, I questioned you. I remained quiet. I actually wondered whether maybe you were becoming forgetful. His voice cracked. And every time I doubted you, I made it easier for Rebecca. I walked over and sat beside him. For a long time, we simply looked across the yard where he had learned to throw a baseball. I remember, I said quietly, when you were 9. He looked at me. You accidentally broke Mrs. Jenkins's front window. A faint smile appeared despite everything. I tried to blame the neighbor's dog. You did. You knew I was lying. I did. He laughed softly through tears. You still made me walk over there. What happened? I apologized. And then, Mrs. Jenkins forgave me. I nodded. Because you told the truth. Michael stared at the ground. I forgot that lesson. No. I placed a hand on his shoulder. You stopped practicing it. There is a difference. Officer Collins quietly approached. Mr. Parker. Yes, officer. I've been thinking. I smiled. That's usually a good sign. A few people chuckled. He smiled awkwardly. I became a police officer because my grandfather raised me. I looked at him. He died before he ever saw me graduate from the academy. He glanced at the fading marks on my wrists. I keep imagining. His voice became emotional. What if that had been him? I answered gently. Then promise me something. Anything. The next time an elderly person stands in front of you, insisting they're telling the truth. He nodded before I finished. I'll slow down. Good. Not because they're elderly. He looked surprised. But because everyone deserves to be heard. He smiled. I'll remember that. Meanwhile, detectives continued photographing documents and collecting statements. The driveway that had once felt like a stage for my humiliation had become a place where facts quietly replaced assumptions. Neighbors who had come expecting free food and conversation now witnessed something far more important: how quickly reputations can be destroyed and how painfully they must be rebuilt. Marcus walked over carrying 2 cups of coffee from the refreshment table someone had forgotten to clean up. He handed one to me. Just like old times. I smiled. You always put too much sugar in yours. He laughed. You still remember. I remember everything. He looked down for a moment. You know? What? I've arrested murderers. I've negotiated hostage situations. I've delivered death notifications. He took a slow sip of coffee. But seeing you in handcuffs, he shook his head. That was the hardest thing I've seen in years. I looked at him. You came? He smiled warmly. I'll always come. Those 4 words reminded me of another promise made decades earlier. The frightened 14-year-old boy who once asked whether anyone would stay had become the man who now promised never to leave. Life has a remarkable way of returning love to those who give it freely. Captain Walker approached once more. Chief? Marcus stood. The document examiner just called. What did they say? She looked toward Rebecca. The preliminary comparison is complete. Everyone waited. The signature on the property transfer appears to have been traced from an older document. Rebecca slowly closed her eyes. Captain Walker continued. And there's something else. Marcus frowned. What? The examiner believes whoever prepared it didn't work alone. The entire driveway fell silent again. Rebecca looked up sharply. For the first time all day, fear replaced guilt, because someone else, someone she had trusted, might now become part of the investigation. A silence heavier than any before settled over the driveway. Rebecca's face had changed. Until that moment, she had looked like someone hoping to explain away bad decisions. Now she looked like someone terrified another name might be spoken aloud. Marcus noticed it immediately. He had spent more than 25 years reading faces during interrogations. Fear like that didn't appear without a reason. He folded the document back into the courthouse folder. Captain? Yes, Chief? Let's move everyone inside. Within half an hour, the folding tables from the neighborhood gathering had been rearranged inside the community clubhouse across the street. Detectives needed shade for their equipment, and there was no reason to keep questioning people under the hot Georgia sun. Neighbors quietly carried bottled water and chairs without anyone asking. The same people who had watched my humiliation were now doing everything they could to make me comfortable. Life can change direction faster than most people realize. Patricia Bennett sat beside me. How are you holding up? I smiled faintly. I've had better Sundays. She laughed softly. So have I. For a few moments, neither of us spoke. Then she reached into her briefcase and removed an old photograph. It showed Denise and me standing outside Maple Ridge Elementary on the day I became principal. I smiled immediately. I haven't seen this in years. Denise gave me a copy. I stared at my late wife's smile. I wish she were here. Patricia squeezed my hand. I think she'd be proud of you. Proud? You've had every opportunity today to become bitter. She looked around the clubhouse. But you haven't. I looked toward Michael sitting alone across the room. I've come close. I know. Michael hadn't moved in nearly 20 minutes. His elbows rested on his knees. His eyes remained fixed on the floor. Sophia quietly walked over and sat beside her father. Neither of them spoke at first. Finally, she whispered, Dad? He looked up. I'm sorry. She shook her head. You don't have to apologize to me. I do. I should have protected Grandpa. Sophia nodded sadly. We both tried. Michael looked confused. You knew something was wrong too. I knew Mom kept lying. Why didn't you tell me? Tears filled her eyes. I tried. Michael searched his memory, then suddenly remembered the questions, the little comments, the times Sophia had said Grandpa wasn't confused, the moments he had dismissed because it seemed easier to believe his wife than his teenage daughter. He covered his face again. I failed both of you. Sophia leaned against him. You can still stop failing. Those simple words struck him harder than any accusation. Across the room, Captain Walker received another phone call. She stepped into the hallway before returning a few minutes later carrying another folder. Marcus looked up. News? She nodded. We identified the notary listed on the forged deed. Patricia frowned. That was quick? The notary's electronic seal was used. Marcus asked, did they authenticate William's identity? Captain Walker slowly shook her head. No. So either procedures weren't followed? Patricia began. Or the notary never actually met William? Captain Walker nodded. We're bringing him in for questioning. Rebecca suddenly looked up. Marcus noticed immediately. Do you know the notary? No. Her answer came too quickly. Captain Walker made another note. About 15 minutes later, Detective Raymond Ellis entered the clubhouse carrying a slim laptop. Chief, Marcus stood. What do you have? We traced the filing. Go on. The quitclaim deed wasn't submitted in person. Patricia looked surprised. It wasn't? No. It was filed electronically through a third-party title processing service. Marcus folded his arms. Can we identify who uploaded it? Detective Ellis nodded. We already have. Everyone waited. The upload originated from a private office computer. Whose office? Detective Ellis looked toward Rebecca. The real estate agency where Mrs. Parker works. Rebecca closed her eyes. Michael looked at her in complete disbelief. You used your office? She didn't answer. Detective Ellis continued. The upload occurred at 7:42 p.m. on a Tuesday. Patricia checked her calendar. That's the same evening William was volunteering at the Literacy Center. I remembered. It had been the weekly reading program. I had spent 3 hours helping second graders practice chapter books while someone was trying to steal my home. The thought made my heart ache. Marcus looked at Rebecca. I'm giving you another opportunity. She remained silent. If someone helped you? No answer. Now is the time to tell us. Rebecca slowly lifted her eyes. There was someone? The room became completely still. Michael stared at her. There was... She nodded once. My office manager. Captain Walker immediately asked. Name? Thomas Granger. What was his role? Rebecca swallowed. He knew title paperwork. Did he know the signature was forged? Rebecca hesitated. Marcus spoke quietly. This matters, she finally answered. I told him William had already signed. Patricia looked unconvinced. And he believed that. Rebecca looked away. I don't know. Detective Ellis immediately stepped outside to relay the information. Michael sat motionless. So, this wasn't just one lie. Rebecca whispered, no. It wasn't just the police. No. It wasn't just the neighbors. She shook her head. No. It was months. Another nod. Everything. Rebecca finally looked directly at him. I thought if I could just finish it, we'd finally have the life I wanted. Michael laughed bitterly. You already had a family. She began crying again. I wasn't thinking. No, he answered quietly. You stopped thinking a long time ago. Marcus walked over to where I sat. You okay? I've been better. He smiled gently. I wasn't asking about your body. I understood. My heart? He nodded. I looked across the room at Michael. I keep remembering the little boy he used to be. Marcus followed my gaze. He remembers too. I hope so. He does. Marcus smiled. I've watched him all morning. He isn't mourning Rebecca. I frowned. No. He's mourning the father he almost lost. I looked down at my hands. The red marks from the handcuffs were beginning to darken into bruises. Marcus noticed. Without saying anything, he disappeared into the clubhouse kitchen. A minute later, he returned carrying a small towel filled with ice. He wrapped it gently around my wrists. The gesture made me laugh. You still fuss over me. He grinned. I learned from the best. Not long afterward, Officer Collins approached carrying a small cardboard box. Mr. Parker, yes, I found these in the back seat of my patrol car. I looked inside. My Bible, my reading glasses, my notebook, the grocery bag with fresh peaches I'd bought that morning. Nothing expensive, nothing valuable, just ordinary pieces of my life. I smiled. Thank you. Officer Collins looked embarrassed. I kept thinking about those peaches. I laughed. The peaches? You were going to make cobbler, weren't you? I nodded. My late wife's recipe. He smiled. My grandmother used to make peach cobbler every Sunday. Without thinking, I asked, do you still have her recipe? He shook his head sadly. We lost it after she passed. I reached into my grocery bag and handed him one of the peaches. When all this is over, I smiled warmly. Come by the house. I'll teach you ours. Officer Collins blinked. After everything that's happened today? You'd still do that. I shrugged. Recipes shouldn't disappear. His eyes filled with tears. Neither of us mentioned that we weren't really talking about recipes. We were talking about kindness, about traditions, about choosing not to let pain become the final chapter. Late that afternoon, the financial crimes detective returned. He walked directly to Marcus. We've completed the emergency review. Marcus looked up. What did you find? The detective opened a thick folder. The money wasn't invested. Michael slowly stood. What? The detective continued. Most of it funded luxury purchases. He began reading. Designer handbags, luxury vacations, jewelry, a condominium down payment held under an LLC. Michael looked as though the floor had disappeared beneath him. Rebecca began sobbing uncontrollably. The detective turned another page. There are also substantial credit card balances hidden from Mr. Parker. Michael whispered, I've been working 60-hour weeks. He looked at Rebecca. While you were doing this? She couldn't answer. There was nothing left to say. Every lie had been uncovered. Every false story had collapsed. Every carefully hidden document had come into the light. But as I looked around that clubhouse, I realized something surprising. I didn't feel victorious. I felt tired, deeply tired. Because justice may expose the truth, but it can never return the months you spent wondering why the people you loved no longer looked at you with trust. And although Rebecca's lies were finally over, one decision still remained. Whether I could ever forgive the son who had believed them. By the time the investigation at the community clubhouse ended, the sun had begun to sink behind the trees lining our subdivision. The neighborhood looked almost peaceful again. Children were riding bicycles. Someone had finally turned the music back on. The folding tables from the abandoned block party were being packed away. If a stranger had driven through at that moment, they never would have guessed that only a few hours earlier, an innocent grandfather had been handcuffed in his own driveway. Life has an unusual way of continuing, even when your heart is still trying to catch up. Captain Denise Walker approached Marcus carrying a folder. We're finished for today. Marcus nodded. The warrants, they've been submitted. What about the property filing? The county clerk has frozen every transfer connected to William Parker's home until the court rules on the forged deed. Patricia Bennett smiled. Exactly what we needed. I let out a long breath. For the first time in months, I no longer worried that I would wake up one morning to discover my home legally belonged to someone else. The house Denise and I had built was safe, Not because of luck, because the truth had finally reached the people who could protect it. Rebecca remained seated alone at one end of the clubhouse. No one avoided her, but no one approached her either. She had spent months isolating me. Now she understood what isolation truly felt like. Michael stood several feet away, staring out the clubhouse window. He hadn't spoken to her in over an hour. Finally, Rebecca whispered, "Michael." He didn't turn around. "I'm sorry." Still no answer. "I know that doesn't fix anything." Silence. "I don't expect you to forgive me." Michael slowly looked back. His eyes weren't angry anymore. They were exhausted. "You keep talking about forgiveness." Rebecca nodded weakly. "But you've never once talked about consequences." She lowered her head. "I'll accept them." "I hope you do." Then he quietly added, "Because I can't protect you anymore." Rebecca closed her eyes. "I know." That was the first completely honest conversation I had heard between them in a very long time. Sophia walked over and slipped her hand into mine. "Grandpa." "Yes, sweetheart. Can we go home?" I looked toward the house across the street. Home. For a moment, I wasn't sure what that word meant anymore. Marcus noticed my hesitation. He stepped beside me. "If you don't feel comfortable staying there tonight," he smiled warmly, "my guest room is available." I laughed softly. "You still think I'm going to let you spoil me?" "You've earned it," Patricia added. "My house is open too." Mrs. Jenkins immediately spoke up. "So is ours." Then Mr. Collins. "Same here." Within seconds, half the neighborhood was offering me a place to stay. I looked around the room, overwhelmed. "Thank you." I paused. "But I think Denise would be disappointed if I let fear chase me out of the home we built." Marcus smiled proudly. "I thought you might say that." Before leaving, Captain Walker approached me one last time. "Mr. Parker?" "Yes, I owe you something." "You don't owe me anything." "I do." She extended her hand. "I'm sorry for what happened today." I shook it gently. "You weren't here." "No, but I represent this department." She glanced toward Officer Collins. "We'll be reviewing our procedures." I smiled. "Good." She seemed surprised. "You're not angry?" I was. I admitted honestly. "But anger isn't a good teacher." "What is?" I thought about that for a moment. "Humility." She nodded slowly. "I'll remember that." Officer Ethan Collins approached next. He carried a small envelope. "Mr. Parker?" "Yes." I stopped by the bakery. I looked inside. A fresh peach pie. I laughed. "You didn't have to do that." "I know." He smiled shyly. "But my grandmother would have insisted." I couldn't help smiling. "Then thank your grandmother for me." He hesitated. "I'd still like to learn that cobbler recipe someday." "You will." "I'd like that." So would I. As everyone prepared to leave, Marcus quietly asked, "William, can we take a walk?" We crossed the street together toward the front yard. The grass still showed tire marks from where the patrol cars had parked. My coffee cup remained on the hood of the Lincoln Navigator exactly where I had set it, before being handcuffed. Neither of us touched it. Marcus looked around the yard. "I learned to ride a bike right here." "You crashed into my mailbox." He laughed. "Twice." "You blamed the mailbox." "It was standing in the wrong place." We both laughed. The sound felt strange, after such a difficult day. Then Marcus became serious. "I've been thinking." "About what?" "You once told me something after I graduated from the academy." I said a lot of things. He smiled. "You said..." He looked toward the front porch. "Never let a badge make you forget the frightened child you used to be." I remembered. "I meant it." "I know." He took a slow breath. "Today..." His voice grew quiet. "I almost forgot." I frowned. "What do you mean?" When I first pulled into the neighborhood, he looked at the driveway. I saw a man in handcuffs. He paused. Then I looked closer. His eyes filled with tears. I saw my parent. I reached over and embraced him. You came anyway? I almost ran. I know. I've never been that scared. You were 14 once. He smiled through tears. So were you. Michael slowly walked toward us. He stopped a respectful distance away. Dad? I turned. I'd like to ask you something. Go ahead. Would you? He struggled to finish. Let me help repair the house. I looked confused. What do you mean? I mean, he glanced toward the front porch. I want to put Mom's bookshelf back. He pointed toward the hallway. I want your school awards back on the wall. He looked toward the living room. I want every family picture Mom threw away replaced. My eyes began to water. Michael continued. And if you'll let me. He swallowed hard. I'd like to move out. Rebecca looked up from across the yard. Michael continued quietly. This house should finally belong to the person who built it. I placed my hand on his shoulder. One step at a time. He nodded. I understand. I can't pretend today never happened. I know. I can't promise forgiveness tomorrow. I know. But he looked at me hopefully. Can I keep showing up? That question mattered more than any apology, because apologies are spoken once. Showing up is something you do every day. I smiled gently. Yes, you can keep showing up. Relief flooded across his face. Over the following weeks, life slowly began changing. Michael filed for counseling on his own. He cooperated fully with investigators. He moved into a small apartment nearby while legal matters continued. Every Saturday morning, he came to the house. Sometimes we repaired broken fences. Sometimes we cleaned out the garage. Sometimes we barely spoke. Healing doesn't always begin with conversations. Sometimes it begins with simply being willing to work beside one another again. Sophia visited almost every weekend. We returned Denise's family photographs to their proper places. We rebuilt the bookshelf Rebecca had planned to remove. We planted new flowers beneath the front porch where Denise used to sit. Marcus visited often. Despite becoming one of the busiest law enforcement leaders in the county, he never stopped arriving with groceries, checking smoke detector batteries, or insisting on mowing my lawn when he thought the grass looked too tall. And every single time he walked through my front door, he smiled and said exactly the same thing. Hi, Mom. Every single time, I answered exactly the same way. Welcome home, son. Almost a year passed before I stood in front of another large crowd. This time, no police cars surrounded me. No handcuffs waited nearby. No one questioned whether I belonged there. Instead, the county courthouse lawn had been transformed into a place of celebration. Rows of white chairs stretched beneath old oak trees. Television cameras stood quietly at the back, though I had politely declined every interview they requested over the previous months. I had never wanted fame. I had only wanted the truth. The county commissioners had organized a community service recognition ceremony to honor families who had made lasting contributions to children in foster care education and public service. When Marcus first told me about it, I almost refused. I don't need another plaque, I had said. He laughed. This one isn't for your wall. No, it's for everyone else. I finally agreed because he looked at me the same way he had when he was 14 and asking permission to attend his first school dance. Some requests are impossible to refuse. Patricia Bennett arrived early and sat beside Mrs. Jenkins and several of our neighbors. Officer Ethan Collins attended in full dress uniform. Captain Denise Walker was there as well. She had insisted on coming, even though she had another official event scheduled later that afternoon. Michael sat in the second row. Sophia sat beside him holding his hand. They looked very different from the broken father and daughter I had seen in the driveway nearly a year earlier. Healing had not erased the pain, but it had given them somewhere to place it. Rebecca was not there. Her criminal case had ended months earlier. She accepted a plea agreement related to filing a false police report, forgery-related offenses, and financial misconduct. As part of the resolution, she paid substantial restitution permanently, surrendered any claim to my property, and was prohibited from handling real estate transactions while licensing authorities completed their review. I did not celebrate when the sentence was announced. Justice had been necessary. But another person's downfall is never a reason for joy. I prayed she would someday become the person she should have been all along. The ceremony began with children from a local elementary school singing "America the Beautiful." As their voices drifted across the lawn, I thought about Denise. She would have cried. She cried at everything involving children: graduations, Christmas concerts, school plays, even spelling bees. I smiled to myself. Some people leave behind photographs. Others leave behind habits that continue living inside the people who loved them. The mayor stepped to the podium. After welcoming everyone, he introduced Marcus. The county police chief would like to recognize someone whose influence reaches far beyond law enforcement. Marcus walked onto the stage wearing his formal uniform. The afternoon sunlight reflected softly from the stars on his collar. He looked confident, respected, and somehow still like the skinny 14-year-old boy who used to leave cereal bowls in the sink, no matter how many times Denise reminded him not to. He adjusted the microphone. "I've given many speeches during my career." He smiled. "But this one is different." He looked directly at me. "This one is personal." The audience became completely quiet. Marcus continued. "When people look at me, they see a police chief. They see the badge. They see the rank. They see the uniform." He paused. "But very few people know who made all of that possible." He turned toward me. "When I was 14 years old, I lost my mother." He took a slow breath. "I believed my life had ended. My little sister and I were about to be separated. I had stopped believing adults kept promises." Then he smiled. "Until one man changed everything." He pointed gently toward me. "William Parker." Applause filled the lawn. Marcus waited until it faded. "I know what some of you are thinking." He laughed softly. "Why does he call William Mom?" The audience smiled. Marcus answered before anyone could wonder further. "Because family isn't defined by biology. It's defined by sacrifice. He packed my school lunches. He stayed awake when I had nightmares. He taught me to drive. He corrected my homework. He celebrated every success. And when I failed," Marcus looked down for a moment. "He never stopped believing in me." His voice became emotional. "I accidentally called him Mom one afternoon because without realizing it, he had already become both parents to me." There wasn't a dry eye in the audience. Marcus stepped down from the podium. Instead of asking me to come forward, he walked all the way across the lawn to where I was sitting, just as he had done the day he removed my handcuffs. He offered me his hand. "Come on, Mom." I laughed through tears. "You're never going to let that go, are you?" "Never." The audience laughed warmly. I walked onto the stage beside him. The mayor presented me with a framed resolution recognizing decades of service to children education and foster families. I thanked him quietly. Then I turned toward the microphone. I hadn't planned to speak, but looking out across the crowd, I realized there was one thing I needed to say. I've lived long enough. I began to learn that people will remember many things about you. They'll remember your job, your mistakes, your successes, your failures. I looked toward Michael. But what matters most is how you make people feel when they believe they have nowhere else to go. I looked toward Marcus. When Marcus entered our home all those years ago, I didn't rescue him. He rescued me too. He reminded me that love grows every time we choose to give it away. I turned toward the audience. Many people ask whether I regret opening my home to foster children because of everything that happened later. I smiled. My answer will always be no. If I had to choose again, I'd open the same front door, set the same dinner table, and welcome the same frightened boy. Marcus quietly wiped away tears. So if anyone here is wondering whether kindness is worth the risk, I paused. It always is. It may not protect you from heartbreak, but it will protect you from becoming someone whose heart no longer knows how to love. The audience rose to its feet, not because of me, because they understood. After the ceremony ended, families gathered beneath the trees. Children ran through the grass. Neighbors laughed together. Officer Collins walked over carrying a covered baking dish. I tried. He looked embarrassed. The peach cobbler. I opened the lid. It looked imperfect. The crust leaned to one side. The peaches had bubbled over. I smiled. It looks exactly like my first one. He laughed. I was hoping you'd say that. Michael walked over with another dish. I brought fried chicken. Sophia held a basket of biscuits. Mrs. Jenkins arrived with sweet tea. Patricia brought Denise's favorite potato salad recipe. Someone unfolded picnic blankets. Someone else found an old football. Within minutes, without planning it. We were having the kind of family picnic Denise used to organize every Memorial Day. Marcus looked around. Mom? Yes? I think she'd like this. I looked toward the old oak tree nearby, imagining Denise smiling the way she always had when everyone she loved gathered around one table. I think she would too. As the sun slowly disappeared below the horizon, I realized something. The worst day of my life had begun with handcuffs, but it ended by revealing who truly stood beside me. Not everyone who shares your last name is your family, and not everyone who calls you by your title truly knows your heart. Real family are the people who stay when staying is difficult. The people who tell the truth when lying would be easier. The people who lift you up after the world has watched you fall. I lost my dignity for a few painful minutes that Sunday morning, but I gained something far more valuable. I discovered that the love Denise and I had poured into other people's lives had never disappeared. It had simply been waiting for the day we needed it returned. If there's one lesson my journey taught me, it's this. Never measure your worth by the way someone chooses to treat you. Cruel people often try to convince kind people that kindness is weakness. They mistake patience for helplessness, generosity for foolishness, and quiet dignity for surrender. But character has a remarkable way of revealing itself over time. Truth doesn't always arrive immediately. Sometimes it takes days, months, or even years before every lie begins to collapse under its own weight. During those waiting seasons, it can be tempting to fight anger with anger or humiliation with revenge. I learned that the stronger path is to protect your integrity, document the truth, and refuse to become the very thing that hurt you. I also learned that family is built through love, trust, sacrifice, and showing up for one another consistently. Blood may connect people, but character keeps them together. The people who stand beside you when your reputation is questioned, your heart is broken, or your future feels uncertain, are the people who truly deserve a place in your life. If you're caring for someone, don't wait to tell them they're appreciated. If you've made a mistake, don't wait to apologize. And if someone has shown you unconditional love, never assume they'll always be there without hearing how much they matter. Thank you for spending this journey with me. If William's story touched your heart, I'd truly love to hear your thoughts. Have you ever been judged unfairly or betrayed by someone you trusted? What would you have done in William's place? Share your story in the comments and let us know where you're watching from and what time it is where you are. If stories about resilience, justice, forgiveness, and hope mean something to you, please like this video and subscribe so we can continue sharing more journeys like this together. Every story leaves us with a choice. We can focus on the pain, or we can search for the lesson hidden inside it. William's journey reminds us that the deepest wounds are often caused not by strangers, but by the people we love and trust the most. Betrayal hurts because it comes wrapped in familiarity. It comes from voices we once found comforting faces. We welcomed into our homes and hands we believed would always protect us. Yet even in those painful moments, our character is revealed not by how others treat us, but by how we choose to respond. Kindness should never be mistaken for weakness. Patience is not surrender. Forgiveness is not forgetting, and silence does not always mean defeat. Sometimes the strongest people are those who refuse to let bitterness replace compassion. William never stopped telling the truth, never stopped treating others with dignity, and never allowed revenge to become his purpose. In the end, it wasn't anger that restored his reputation, it was integrity. The truth needed time, but once it came into the light, every lie collapsed under its own weight. This story also reminds us that family is not defined by blood alone. Real family are the people who stay when life becomes difficult. They are the ones who stand beside you when your name is questioned, your heart is broken, and the world seems ready to believe the worst about you. Sometimes those people are born into your family. Sometimes they enter your life through unexpected circumstances. What matters isn't where they came from. It is whether they choose to love, support, and protect you when it matters most. If you are going through betrayal today, don't let someone else's cruelty convince you to stop being a good person. Hold on to your values. Protect your peace. Keep doing what is right, even when no one seems to notice. Time has a remarkable way of revealing truth, and genuine character always outlasts deception. Your kindness may not change everyone around you, but it will ensure that no one can take away the person you have chosen to become. If this story touched your heart, I'd truly love to hear from you. Have you ever been betrayed by someone you trusted? Were you able to forgive, or did you choose a different path? Share your experience in the comments below. Your story might encourage someone who needs hope today. And if you enjoy emotional family dramas filled with justice, redemption, and inspiring life lessons, don't forget to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications so you never miss our next story. Thank you for being here, and may kindness always be stronger than betrayal.